From Hollywood, it's time now for...
Johnny Dollar.
Tim Connors, John boy. Congratulate me.
Congratulations, Tim. What for?
I just had another boy. 7 pounds, 12 ounces. Hey, you like cigars?
Sure.
Well, come on down and pick one up. Oh, maybe you better pack a suitcase, too. I got one for you out in Culver, Montana.
Where's that?
I just told you. Out in Montana somewhere. We have a debt policyholder there named Henderson.
Henderson, huh?
Yeah. Now, we don't know if he was murdered, committed suicide, or had an accident.
Well, what does it look like?
All three.
Okay, Tim, be there in an hour.
Tonight and every weekday night, Bob Bailey in the transcribed adventures of the man with the action-packed expense account, America's fabulous freelance insurance investigator.
Yours truly, Johnny Dollar. Expense account submitted by Special Investigator Johnny Dollar to Paramount Insurance Adjusters, Hartford, Connecticut. The following is an accounting of expenditures during my investigation of the Henderson matter, whatever it's going to be. Expense account item 1, $1.25 for a detailed map. I had an idea that Culver, Montana was a place that only Rand McNally might know about. They did. I found it tucked up in the high northern corner of the state near Great Falls.
Hey, where's your bag?
Home.
I told you to pack it. Now, look.
Give me a cigar, Tim. Tell me about the new boy and the new case.
Okay, have a chair. Here you are. I wouldn't smoke it if I were you. Terrible. Cost me $2 a box. Hey, you know something? I'm thinking of naming the new boy Johnny.
Oh, tough case, huh?
Yeah. Look. We're in the same sweet old spot, Johnny. Same old problem. One of our policy holders is dead, and for looking into the circumstances of his death, the insurance company is no longer a friend of the widow and orphan, but a big, bad monster trying to weasel out of a just claim.
All claims are just claims, or are they?
Well, of course they are. No one ever tried to pull a fast one on an insurance company. Well, the world's full of nice, honest, straight-playing people.
Uh-huh. Now tell me about getting sandbagged in a poker game.
Look, I want to get this out of the way and get back over to the hospital and see my wife. Now, John, this claim came into the insurance office yesterday afternoon, airmail special. The insurance company turned it over to me today.
What company?
Western. The policy's worth $25,000 face value, double indemnity if death was by accident. No payment for suicide.
Uh-huh. You say the man's name was Henderson?
Yeah, it says here, George Walter Henderson, Montana rancher. Last Thursday, he fell 4 stories out of a hotel window in Culver and died instantly. At least that's what we have in this report here. Somebody could have shoved him, or he could have taken the leap. Now, we have to know for certain.
Oh, what's on the claim report?
Accidental. There was no inquest, no police investigation, and that's not good enough for us.
Uh-huh. This Henderson prominent?
Well, he was big enough, Johnny. Cattleman, rancher. He was also a major stockholder in the only newspaper in Culver, so I doubt if his paper'd suggest suicide or anything else, do you?
I don't know, Tim. I never met the editor.
Well, meet him if you like. Talk to him. Talk to anybody in Culver. Find out what was what.
This is a lousy cigar.
Johnny, you know how to handle these things. We have to have more information than this.
Have you tried to do anything on it at all?
Yeah, I phoned the sheriff's office long distance to talk to a man named Holton, Eve Holton. He said he'd be happy to cooperate.
Well, what else?
I phoned the beneficiary to get some information. Name's Pauline Henderson, his widow.
Is she going to cooperate, too?
I don't think so, pal.
Huh?
She hung up on me.
We will continue with the Henderson matter in a moment.
Friends, how'd you like to thrill your favorite youngster with some of the most exciting toys of the year? Picture the breathless excitement of any child surrounded by 6 gaily colored balloon-like giant animals up to 3 feet long, and all for the low price of just $1. First, you get Bounzo the Clown with round pot belly and funny nose. Next comes Hoppy the Australian kangaroo. Third, there's Roscoe the roller skating bear. He's 2 feet tall and looks almost like real. Fourth, there's Whitey the fat indoor snowman. And fifth, Mortimer the giant mouse, 18 inches long and sure to scare the whiskers off any cat. That's 5 different giant animals. But now hold your breath for the most sensational toy of all, the star of the whole Christmas season, the jolly giant talking Santa Claus. Guaranteed to make everybody's Christmas a merrier one. He's a big roly-poly happy Santa. He stands erect on 2 legs, is actually over 3 feet tall and 32 inches around. Best of all, he actually talks. Just pull the tape and he says, Merry Christmas for all to hear. He's the biggest, merriest talkingest Santa ever. Sure to please your youngsters and spread good cheer. Yes, Giant Santa proves there really is a Santa Claus. That's a total of 6 giant animals made of brightly colored preformed sturdy latex, which the kids can easily inflate. And the cost just $1, not for each. Just $1 for all 6 of these lovable giants who'll turn your home into a circus parade. And here's a surprise. Mail your order today and you'll also receive absolutely free Peter the Rabbit, actually over 2 feet tall with big red ears almost 9 inches long. But you must send now. Rush $1 plus 10 cents for packing and mailing for each set you want to Giant Animals, Box 90, Grand Central Station, New York City. If not delighted with every one of your 7 giant animals, return them to the Super Animals Company for a full refund, but keep the giant talking Santa as our gift. Order now. Supplies are limited. Rush $1.10 for packing and mailing for each set in cash, check, or money order to Giant Animals, Box 90, Grand Central Station, New York City. That's $1 plus 10 cents with your name and address. Mail to Giant Animals, Box 90, Box 90, Grand Central Station, New York City. Giant Animals, Box 90, Grand Central Station, New York City.
Expense account item 2, $185.65. Airfare, Hartford, Connecticut to Great Falls, Montana. The nearest point I could make to Culver by air. Item 3, $3. I took the train to Culver. Sometimes when I'm having nightmares, I dream about the smelter stack standing up against the cadaverous hills that lie to the south of town. Everything, including the 3 or 4 feet of snow covered with a uniform dinginess, made Culver an ugly little town set in an ugly notch between 2 ugly mountains. The only hotel in town was the Butte. It happened to be 4 stories high. It also happened to be the place where George Henderson had met his death. Okay, just a minute.
Mr. Dollar?
Yeah.
I'm Eve Holton, sheriff here.
Huh?
You're from the insurance people, aren't you?
Yeah, that's right.
Been expecting that you'd be in sooner or later.
Well, I'm glad to meet you, Mr. Holton.
Call me Eve, son. Everybody does. Hey, got a drink on you?
And no, I haven't.
Well, I got one on me. Nice and chilly, too.
Well, I'll see if there's some glasses around here, Sheriff. You didn't waste any time looking me up.
No, I guess I didn't, son. Thought it'd save a little time this way. Knew you'd be looking me up sooner or later. Really thought we ought to have this drink together. Private. May not have any more together while you're here.
Uh-huh.
Well, health and happiness, boy.
Same to you.
Now, this drink we're having. This is in your room, and I'm just a fellow welcoming you to Culver. In my office or on that street out there, I'm a sheriff, and I'm going to be real official.
All right, go on.
I want you to notice I'm not asking any questions of you, son. I'm just answering anything that you might want to ask me right now.
All right.
You're going to have to plow ahead yourself on this one, pretty much alone. And let me tell you what kind of plowing you got in store for you. Excuse me. Now, first off, this is a little burg like you ain't used to. We got 3,500, 4,000 people living here. Some of them working that mine you've seen on your way into town. Others hire out to work on the ranches around here. Some in business.
Uh-huh.
Very tight little place. We hardly ever fool around with anybody else.
Sure.
Now, you're here because your insurance company don't like to pay off on a policy without knowing whys and wherefores. They don't like the word accident without knowing some of the details.
No, they don't.
There's a lot of people here, most people, who don't care about those details. As a matter of fact, son, they'd all just as soon put old George Henderson down on the ground and say it was an accident and let it go at that.
Well, maybe it was, Sheriff. I don't know. But I'm going to find out.
Yeah, well, now, let me go on. Those people who don't like the details don't like detail getters. You understand?
Yeah.
Scare you any?
Not yet.
You'll do all right, son. So, maybe you'd kind of like to get your coat on and come to a funeral with me. Starts at 3.
Henderson's?
Yeah. Give you a chance to look around, get the lay of the land.
Okay, good idea.
I wondered what kind of bull workers insurance companies turned out. I like you, Dollar. You're all right. You ain't bothering with any questions till you got some worthwhile asking. You tired?
A little.
Well, this won't take too long.
half hour later, I was standing beside Sheriff Eve Holton on a flat-top hillside that served as a cemetery. The snow was white and gleaming under the winter sun of the mid-afternoon skies, the air cold and crisp.
To thee, our heavenly Father, who knoweth all things, we commit the body of our beloved to thy eternal care. Thy will be done. Trusting ever in thy mercy, we invoke the consolation of thy sheltering wing. Earth to earth, ashes to ashes, dust to dust. In sure and certain hope of resurrection into eternal life, in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Ghost. Amen.
Yeah. Here. Oh, that's that.
Yeah.
Poor George.
Eve.
Which
one is Mrs. Henderson?
There.
That's Pauline Henderson?
Yeah, that's her.
Well, she can't be more than 25.
26, to be exact, Dollar. I went to her birthday party 2 months ago.
Well, how old was George Henderson?
59. Went to his party, too. Yeah. Pretty thing,
Very. Any other family?
Nope.
No other wife, huh?
Nope. Want to meet her?
No, not right now.
Well, suit yourself. Kind of thought you might start thinking when you got a look at her. Now, just keep on the way you're doing. You're doing fine. When there's something you got to know, you'll find out.
Well, Eve, I already know one thing.
Yeah? What's that?
I'm going to ask for a coroner's inquest.
Just from seeing her?
Just from seeing her.
You're a sly one, Johnny.
Johnny Dollar will be back in a moment to tell you about tomorrow's episode.
Friends, send for your set of some of the most exciting toys of the year. 6 giant inflatable toys for only $1, some up to 3 feet tall. You get Bounso the Happy Clown, Hoppy the Australian Kangaroo, Roscoe the 2 feet long roller skating bear, Whitey the fat indoor snowman, Mortimer the giant mouse 18 inches long, and last but not least, the great giant talking Santa, a roly-poly giant over 3 feet tall and 32 inches around the belly that actually says Merry Christmas out loud when you pull the tape. That's 6 sensational giant toys for only $1, made of sturdy, gaily colored latex that the kids can easily inflate. Send $1 for each set to Giant Animals, Box 90, Grand Central Station, New York City. And if you order right now, you get Peter the Rabbit over 2 feet tall absolutely free. If not delighted with your giant animals, your money refunded immediately. Order today. You may never hear this offer again. Rush $1 plus 10 cents for packing and mailing in cash, check, or money order to Giant Animals, Box 90, Grand Central Station, New York City. That's $1 plus 10 cents for each set with your name and address to Giant Animals, Box 90, Grand Central Station, New York City.
Now, here's our star to tell you about tomorrow's episode of The Henderson Matter.
Tomorrow, I find out how hard it is to believe what I see. And I see plenty. Join us, won't you? Yours truly, Johnny Dollar.
Yours truly, Johnny Dollar, starring Bob Bailey, is transcribed in Hollywood. Written by John Dawson, it is produced and directed by Jack Johnstone. Be sure and join us tomorrow night, same time and station, for the next exciting episode of Yours truly, Johnny Dollar. This is Roy Rowan speaking. From Hollywood, it's time now for
Johnny Dollar.
Eve Holton. How are you this morning?
Oh, pretty good, Sheriff. How about yourself?
Oh, I'm fine, dandy. You were over at the City Hall this morning, huh?
Yeah, that's right. I requested the coroner to conduct an inquest into the death of George Henderson.
Yeah, I know. The coroner left it up to me.
Huh?
Yeah, came into my office and asked me if I had any reason to conduct an inquest into the death of George Henderson. I told him I didn't have any reason, but I'd do it if I was ordered to.
Well, what happens now?
Well, somebody'll have to decide whether there's going to be an inquest or not.
Who?
Mayor, I guess. I don't know. Anyhow, you stirred up some action, and you'll be getting it.
Yeah, where?
Just stay where you are, son. My guess is it'll come right to you.
Tonight and every weekday night, Bob Bailey in the transcribed adventures of the man with the action-packed expense account, America's fabulous freelance insurance investigator.
Yours truly, Johnny Dollar. Expense account submitted by Special Investigator Johnny Dollar to Paramount Insurance Adjusters, Hartford, Connecticut. The following is an accounting of expenditures during my investigation of the Henderson matter. The death of George Henderson of Culver, Montana, where I am today. A casual certification announced the death is accidental, having been received by a fall from a hotel window. No one in Culver seemed to be too worried about any of the details. But details are my job. That's why I requested the coroner's office to conduct an inquest. I took Sheriff Holton's suggestion and waited to see what my request flushed up in the dingy-colored mountains of Culver. An hour later, my first bird winged up to my hotel room. He was a tall, gray-haired man in a Stetson, earmuffs, and the western version of a Chesterfield. His Honor, Mayor Newton.
Mr. Dollar, I want to talk to you about this request you made for an inquest into George Henderson's death.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor.
You are aware, of course, that George's death, and he was one of my beloved and personal friends for many, many years, was a great blow to the entire community.
No, I didn't know that, Mayor Newton.
Huh?
Only the smallest part of the community were at his funeral yesterday afternoon. His widow and I'd say not more than half a dozen other people.
Well, I understand that your insurance company is not quite satisfied with the certification. Is that correct?
More or less.
What would they need to be satisfied, sir?
An exact knowledge of how Mr. Henderson fell out that hotel window.
I would rather no inquest were held into Mr. Henderson's death.
Why?
Why, sir, George Henderson is dead and buried. It should remain that way. If an inquest were to be held, it would only prove that George fell out of a window. I beg you to consider that, Mr. Dollar.
You seem very certain that an investigation would prove that death was accidental, Mayor.
It was accidental. George fell out the window.
Well, now, I can't just tell that to my insurance company, can I?
We are a small community with a rudimentary police force, not equipped in any way for an exhaustive investigation, nor for the financial burden of such an investigation. I strongly urge you to reconsider this request for a coroner's inquest.
You do?
I do indeed. His untimely death was an unfortunate occurrence, outside the pale of any of our poor abilities to foresee. A terrible, terrible accident.
I'd like proof of that.
Proof?
An inquest, Mr. Mayor.
An inquest. All right.
We will continue with the Henderson matter in a moment.
Friends, how'd you like to thrill your favorite youngster with some of the most exciting toys of the year? Picture the breathless excitement of any child surrounded by 6 gaily colored balloon-like giant animals up to 3 feet long, and all for the low, low price of just $1. First, you get Bounzo the clown with round pot belly and funny nose. Next comes Hoppy the Australian kangaroo. Third, there's Roscoe the roller skating bear. He's 2 feet tall and looks almost like real. Fourth, there's Whitey the fat indoor snowman. And fifth, Mortimer the giant mouse, 18 inches long and sure to scare the whiskers off any cat. That's 5 different giant animals. But now hold your breath for the most sensational toy of all, the star of the whole Christmas season, the jolly giant talking Santa Claus. Guaranteed to make everybody's Christmas a merrier one. He's a big roly-poly happy Santa. He stands erect on 2 legs, is actually over 3 feet tall and 32 inches around. Best of all, he actually talks. Just pull the tape and he says, Merry Christmas for all to hear. He's the biggest, merriest, talkingest Santa ever. Sure to please your youngsters and spread good cheer. Yes, Giant Santa proves there really is a Santa Claus. That's a total of 6 giant animals made of brightly colored preformed sturdy latex, which the kids can easily inflate. And the cost just $1, not for each. Just $1 for all 6 of these lovable giants who'll turn your home into a circus parade. And here's a surprise. Mail your order today and you'll also receive absolutely free Peter the Rabbit, actually over 2 feet tall with big red ears almost 9 inches long. But you must send now. Rush $1 plus 10 cents for packing and mailing for each set you want to Giant Animals, Box 46, Grand Central Station, New York City. If not delighted with every one of your 7 giant animals, return them to the Super Animals Company for a full refund, but keep the giant talking Santa as our gift. Order now. Supplies are limited. Rush $1.10 for packing and mailing for each set in cash, check, or money order to Giant Animals, Box 46, Grand Central Station, New York City. That's $1 plus 10 cents with your name and address. Mail to Giant Animals, Box 46, Grand Central Station, New York City. Giant Animals, Box 46, Grand Central Station, New York City.
My interview with Mayor Newton had convinced me that I'd get no real help from him in the Henderson matter. Quite the contrary. Expense account item 3, 20 cents coffee. Myself and Sheriff Eve Holton.
Well, you got it.
Huh?
At the direction of Mr. Jackson. That's our coroner. He deputized me temporarily to conduct an inquest. It's going to take place tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock, City Hall.
Tomorrow, Sheriff.
Room 207.
Well, Eve, you won't have time to do anything.
No, I guess I won't. Not much, anyhow.
Oh, brother. The mayor pitched me pretty hard for not having the inquest.
Knew he would.
Any idea why?
Nope.
You think somebody asked him to stop it?
Yeah.
Who?
Don't know, Johnny. Honest.
The next morning, I struggled my way against a belligerent north wind to City Hall and the inquest, if you could call it that. I sat in the back of the room and listened while a Dr. Horace Nam assured the 6-man jury that George Henderson was quite dead when he was called out of his office and examined him on the street. Dr. Nam reckoned George had died from a broken neck. An ancient bellhop, a desk clerk, and a chambermaid gave their versions of what had happened the day Henderson fell out the window.
You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, so help you God?
I do, Sheriff.
I'm the acting coroner today, Miss Cobley. Sit down. Now, when did you see Mr. Henderson last?
Last Thursday morning.
Where was this, Miss Cobley?
At the Butte Hotel.
Mm-hmm. You know what time of the morning it was?
About 10 o'clock. I went in to make his bed and straighten up his room.
I see.
I made his bed while he worked on some papers there, and then I left.
Did you see him after that?
No, sir.
You didn't see him come downstairs for breakfast or anything?
No, sir.
Do you know if anybody went up to see him?
I believe I saw Mrs. Henderson in the lobby after that.
Do you see Mrs. Henderson in this room?
Yes, sir. I believe that's Mrs. Henderson over there.
No, that's Mrs. Henderson. Now, do you know if Mrs. Henderson visited Mr. Henderson in his room?
No, sir. I don't know that.
Miss Cobley, did you happen to notice if anyone else went up to Mr. Henderson's room that morning?
No, sir.
It went on all morning long. Sheriff Holton, acting in the coroner's position, questioned person after person. All had more or less the same vague knowledge concerning George Henderson's death. I was most interested in Pauline Henderson's testimony.
Now then, Mrs. Henderson, when did you last see your husband?
Thursday. I went to see him about noon, maybe a little before.
Where did you see him, Miss Henderson?
At the Butte Hotel, in his room there.
The same room he occupied prior to his death?
Of course.
The same room from which he fell?
Yes.
Were you alone when you went to see him, Mrs. Henderson?
Yes. I must have left before 12:30. I had an appointment at the dentist.
That was the last time you saw your husband alive?
Yes. I was still in the dentist's chair when they told me he'd fallen out the window.
What did you and your husband talk about, Mrs. Henderson?
Must I answer that?
Well, we're trying to determine something here. I'd appreciate it.
George and I discussed our divorce.
Could you tell us about that?
George and I decided to part about a month ago. He moved out of the house and moved into the hotel.
Mm-hmm. Outside of the divorce, were you on good terms?
Oh, yes, we've always been on good terms.
Mrs. Henderson, do you think there's a chance that he might have thrown himself out that window? Mrs. Henderson, do you think he might have thrown himself out that window?
No. At least not over us, if that's what you mean.
As far as you knew, was your husband in good health?
Yes, he was.
You happen to know when he was examined last?
Oh, a month or so ago, he was in perfect health.
One more thing. Did Mr. Henderson drink?
Yes.
Did he drink that morning with you?
I think he had a couple of drinks. Yes, he had a drink or two while we were talking. He could have stumbled to that window.
The clothes were New York, the perfume Paris, the jewelry Tiffany's. The look, you might expect it on the Riviera, where everybody tries to act bored with too many good things in life. Her dress, black for the occasion of death, was cut too well and too carefully for her to pass as a grieving widow. She answered the questions without hesitation or emotion. 15 minutes later, the jury brought in the expected verdict.
Therefore, it is the opinion of this jury that the said deceased, George Walter Henderson, came to his death as a result of injuries incurred in a fall from the fourth floor of the Butte Hotel at or about 12:45 p.m. on the 19th day of this month. No evidence to the contrary, it is deemed and declared that the manner of death was accidental. Adjourned.
And that was it. As far as Culver's people, its police and its mayor were concerned. Yeah, the mayor.
Well, Mr. Dollar, I hope you're satisfied.
It was a pretty good inquest, Mayor Newton.
I trust the official verdict of the jury will answer any questions your insurance company might have had on their minds and clear this whole matter up.
I'll forward it to them and tell them the circumstances under which the inquest was conducted, Mr. Mayor.
Satisfactory, I trust.
No, but it served a purpose. Now that everybody thinks it was an accident, everybody will breathe easier.
Certainly.
Yeah. If everybody's relaxing like that, somebody's going to get careless. See you, Mr. Mayor.
Johnny Dollar will be back in a moment to tell you about tomorrow's episode.
Friends, send for your set of some of the most exciting toys of the year. 6 giant inflatable toys for only $1, some up to 3 feet tall. You get Bounce-O the happy clown, Hoppy the Australian kangaroo, Roscoe the 2 feet long roller skating bear, Whitey the fat indoor snowman, Mortimer the giant mouse 18 inches long, and last but not least, the great giant talking Santa, a roly-poly giant over 3 feet tall and 32 inches around the belly that actually says Merry Christmas out loud when you pull the tape. That's 6 sensational giant toys for only $1, made of sturdy, gaily colored latex that the kids can easily inflate. Send $1 for each set to Giant Animals, Box 46, Grand Central Station, New York City. And if you order right now, you get Peter the Rabbit over 2 feet tall absolutely free. If not delighted with your giant animals, your money refunded immediately. Order today. You may never hear this offer again. Rush $1 plus 10 cents for packing and mailing in cash, check, or money order to Giant Animals, Box 46, Grand Central Station, New York City. That's $1 plus 10 cents for each set with your name and address. To Giant Animals, Box 46, Grand Central Station, New York City.
Now, here's our star to tell you about tomorrow's episode of The Henderson Matter.
People do get careless tomorrow, all over Culver, Montana. Join us, won't you? Yours truly, Johnny Dollar.
Yours truly, Johnny Dollar, starring Bob Bailey, is transcribed in Hollywood. Written by John Dawson, it is produced and directed by Jack Johnstone. Be sure and join us tomorrow night, same time and station, for the next exciting episode of Yours truly, Johnny Dollar. Roy Rowan speaking. From Hollywood, it's time now for...
Johnny Dollar.
Eve Holden, son.
Hi, Sheriff.
You put in a call for me, did you?
Yes, I'm ready to go to work. Now that the inquest's been held and George Henderson's death is officially an accident, I might be able to move around your little town a little easier.
What can I do for you?
Help me to move around.
The case is closed, as far as I'm concerned.
Eve, what's the matter with you? That inquest was a farce. For all I know, Henderson could have been pushed out of that hotel window. The attitude of different people in this town makes that whole thing...
Hold on now, son, hold on. I meant to say it's closed as far as my office is concerned. Personally, I think it needs investigating. We can help each other, maybe, you and me.
Can I come over?
Oh, I better come there. You know how folks are around here.
Tonight and every weekday night, Bob Bailey in the transcribed adventures of the man with the action-packed expense account, America's fabulous freelance insurance investigator.
Yours truly, Johnny Dollar. Expense account submitted by Special Investigator Johnny Dollar. Location, Culver, Montana. To Paramount Insurance Adjusters, Hartford, Connecticut. The following is an accounting of expenditures during my investigation of the Henderson matter. The question, accident, suicide, or murder? Expense account item 4, $3.48. 1 day later to Tim Connor's office in Hartford explaining the situation in Culver.
I'll read it back to you, Mr. Dollar. Mr. Tim Connors, Paramount Insurance Adjusters, Hartford, Connecticut. Coroner's inquest into death of George Henderson, policy number EMP-196667, found death to be accidental. In my opinion, the inquest was not thorough. Have decided to stay on in Culver and conduct my own investigation. If any change, please advise via Western Union, Butte Hotel, Culver. Am forwarding copy of coroner's verdict this date. Best regards, Dollar. Correct?
Okay.
Oh, Mr. Dollar. Good luck.
Yeah, sure. Expense account item 5, 68 cents. Postage. I mailed a copy of the coroner's verdict to Hartford, airmail special. After that, I went back to my hotel to wait for the sheriff, Eve Holton. Come on in, Eve. Oh.
Hello.
Hello.
Mr. Dollar, my name's Porter. I'm the manager of this hotel.
Oh, well, come in, Mr. Porter.
I can't right now. I've got some other things to attend to.
Well, anything I can do for you, Mr. Porter?
I'm going to have to ask you for your room, Mr. Dollar.
Oh? When?
Today.
Any particular reason?
We're all filled up. The room's been reserved for 6 weeks.
By whom?
What?
Who reserved it?
Why, a man from Bozeman. It's a sort of convention.
Sort of convention? What kind of convention is that, Mr. Porter?
Look, Mr. Dollar, you'll have to leave this room today. The man's coming in tonight.
Uh-huh. And there's no other hotel in town?
That's the way it is, Mr. Dollar.
No other place to stay?
No.
So I have to pack my bags and get out of town, is that it?
I must have the room, Mr. Dollar.
Who asked you to say you wanted the room, Mr. Porter? Who asked you to come here and kick me out?
Why, no one.
Well, you go back to no one, Mr. Porter, and you tell no one that I'm staying right here in this room here in Culver until I finish what I have to do here. You tell that to no one, will you?
Mr. Dollar, I'd hate to call the police.
Go ahead, Mr. Porter. Be sure and tell them about the sort of convention you're having and how all the rooms are sold out. Tell them about Mr. No One and tell them I called your bluff. Anything else, Mr. Porter? I was at the stage where I was beginning to take notes for myself. Note 1. The mayor didn't want to have an inquest into the death of George Henderson. Note 2. When they did have an inquest, they didn't want to really find out anything. Note 3. Mr. Hotel Manager wanted me to keep on not finding out anything by getting me out of town. I explained all of this to Eve Holton when he showed up a half an hour later.
Well, kind of tight, isn't it?
I don't know what that means, Sheriff, but it's pretty stupid.
Yeah, it's stupid, son, but it could be effective. Now, I'll tell you what. If Porter calls the police, I'm the police, so don't worry about that. I'll hem him and haw him.
All right, thanks.
Now then, tell me how much your insurance company's stuck for.
$50,000 if Henderson's death goes by as an accident.
The good book says that's what it was.
I know. There's a chance, too, he had a heart failure and fell out of that window.
No, sure. Always a chance.
We might have to dig him up and find out, Sheriff.
Oop, hold on. Autopsies and digging people up is one thing you'd have a hard time doing around here.
I might insist on it. I don't know. We'll let that go for now. Say, tell me about Mrs. Henderson. Where's she from?
Here. Right here in Culver.
Now, she didn't get that mink coat and those diamonds she was wearing at the inquest in Culver. More important, she didn't get that continental look here either. So what's the story?
Well, her name was Pauline Underwood before she married George. Born and raised right here in Culver. Of course, she went to school in the East, and she's been in Europe a couple of times, but most of her life's been right here.
She is a mighty pretty widow.
And a mighty rich one, too. Henderson had it.
I know. This divorce she talked about at the inquest yesterday.
Well, everybody in town knew they weren't getting along, never did get along. How could they? Pauline's 26 and George is 59. He could have been her father. As a matter of fact, he almost was.
Well, tell me about that.
You got a drink?
Oh, yeah.
Well, George raised Pauline from the time she was 14. He paid for all her schooling and growing up. She didn't have any folks after her old man died. George was pretty good to her.
He sure was. Was he a friend of her parents?
Well, Tom Underwood worked out at the ranch for George. When he died, there was Pauline standing around.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, thanks.
And she eventually married him and his money, huh?
Well, I wouldn't put it that way exactly. I think she liked him. Now, I've gone over what you're thinking, son. Those two were talking about divorce for some time. The papers had been drawn up for a settlement. She'd have got a lot of alimony and so on. So Pauline had no call to push him out that window or have him pushed out. At least not for money.
All right. Suppose he didn't want a divorce. Suppose he loved her and she came to the hotel room that morning and he pleaded with her to try all over again. Suppose she said no. Suppose she said no in a great big cold way. And George Henderson sat there and thought about it after she left. And he got sick all over and he walked over to that window and...
Suicide?
What do you think? You knew him.
He wasn't the suicide type.
Oh, nobody's the suicide type until they come to the end of the line, Eve. Then it's too late to interview them and ask them how they got there. Everybody seems to think it was an accident, so I'm just throwing words around.
Well, you have a right to do that if you aren't satisfied, son.
Hey, getting back to this hotel again. Who might want me to get out of town and not ask any questions?
Anybody.
Well, who?
No idea.
But it's somebody who has some feelings in this. Hey, who owns this hotel, Eve?
Noah Baxter.
Who's Noah Baxter?
Rancher. Got a place about 15 miles from here. Pretty big man.
Uh-huh. Friend of Henderson's?
Yeah.
And let me put that question a little different. Baxter a friend of Mrs. Henderson's?
I don't know.
Can you find out?
I can try.
Well, find out about him and any other friends, Eve. Friends that might be younger, that might have gone to Europe or school in the East.
Yeah, sure. What are you thinking now, son?
Well, now, if I were Mrs. Henderson and my husband fell out of a window in this hotel and killed himself, I'd hire a lawyer and I'd sue the hotel for damages. If the insurance company didn't pay off my claim, I'd hire a lawyer and insist that they pay that claim. I'd do those things right away, Sheriff, especially if I thought it was all legitimate.
Yeah. Yeah.
2 hours later, I received a wire from Tim Connors. He requested me to look up a man named Thurber, an insurance broker living in Great Falls. Expense account item 6, $4.92, tank of gas. I borrowed Sheriff Holton's car and drove the 80-odd miles to Great Falls that afternoon. Mr. Thurber bought lunch.
My lord, I hope there isn't anything to all this, Mr. Dollar. I just hope there isn't. George Henderson.
Yeah, well, there isn't anything to anything yet, Mr. Thurber. I'm still trying to find out the facts.
Oh, I knew you were over in Culver. I tried to call you there a couple of times. You were out both times. Finally, I put in a call to the home office in Hartford. I talked to this man, Connors, with the adjustment agency.
Yeah.
You see, Mr. Dollar, it's like this. I've been over in Jackson Hole for 5 days now hunting duck. We were way in, and I didn't hear about Henderson's death until I got back yesterday.
Uh-huh.
Now, look, Mr. Dollar, I don't know what reflection this will have on your attitude toward this case, but 2 days before I left, Mr. Henderson telephoned me here in Great Falls. He said he wanted to change the beneficiary on his policy.
Oh, in other words, he was going to cut his wife out, huh?
Yes, I suppose so. I know they weren't getting along.
There'd been talk of divorce.
Yes, I guess so.
Uh-huh. Did he name a new beneficiary?
Yes, a school teacher in Culver named Matilda Knickerbocker. Everybody calls her Mattie.
What was his connection with her?
None that I know of. I think it was just a name for him to throw in until he could decide on another beneficiary. Why, he didn't have...
Wait a minute. Mattie Knickerbocker.
Just a school teacher. Everybody knows her. He was awful mad when he talked to me that day. I could tell it in his voice. Now, here's what might interest you just a little more. The day I left on my hunting trip, Mr. Henderson phoned me again. He said to never mind. Mrs. Henderson was still his beneficiary.
Had you changed the policies yet?
No.
Are you sure it was Henderson who telephoned you?
Well, yes, I think it was him.
Do you remember when you got the call?
Oh, somewhere around noon, a little later, I guess.
He died between 12:30 and 1.
And it must have been just before he fell out the window.
He phoned you long distance from Culver, huh?
Yes, sir.
Well, he was supposed to have been in the hotel all morning, so he had to phone from his room.
Well, you can check that, can't you?
You'd be surprised how hard it is to check simple things like that around the Butte Hotel. Did you know Henderson very well, Mr. Thurber?
He was a customer. I wrote a lot of insurance for him.
Know his wife?
Oh, yes.
Well, tell me about them. Well, go ahead, Mr. Thurber. Now, look, accidents rarely have reason behind them. Suicides and murders always do.
You don't think it was an accident?
Well, let's say I've heard enough and seen enough to make it a draw so far. Go ahead, tell me about him.
And I wish I was married to Mrs. Henderson. I wish she could see me. I think most any man who's ever met her hoped the same thing. Young men, old men, any kind. But she picked George. George was as tough and leathery as these mountains around us, exactly her opposite. But Pauline married him.
He raised her. He was close to her all her adult life.
Yes. But, Mr. Dollar, you know and I know she didn't have to marry him. She could have married anybody here in Culver or anybody in London or Paris. You see what I mean?
Not quite.
Well, I always had the idea that after she married him, she kept letting him know she could have had anybody else she wanted.
Go ahead, Thurber.
I think she married him for his money. I think she would have killed him for his money.
There'll be another intriguing episode in our story of the Henderson matter tomorrow.
Tomorrow, the whole affair becomes a town issue, and I become the town goat. Incidentally, let me take a moment to say thanks for the many kind letters you've sent. We appreciate them more than you know. And I only wish it were possible to answer them all personally. Again, thank you. Yours truly, Johnny Dollar.
Yours truly, Johnny Dollar, starring Bob Bailey, is transcribed in Hollywood. Written by John Dawson, it is produced and directed by Jack Johnstone. Be sure and join us tomorrow night, same time and station, for the next exciting episode of Yours truly, Johnny Dollar. Roy Rowan speaking. From Hollywood, it's time now for...
Johnny Dollar.
This is Mrs. Henderson. You asked me to call, Mr. Dollar?
Yes, Mrs. Henderson. I'm with Paramount Insurance Adjusters.
Oh, yes.
You probably know we asked for the inquest into your husband's death.
Yes, I know.
We're trying to clear up the entire matter as quickly as we can, Mrs. Henderson. I'd like to talk to you.
Oh?
Hate to trouble you at a time like this.
Well, that's all right, Mr. Dollar. When do you want to talk?
May I come out to the house this afternoon?
There's a nice restaurant called Big Horn Lodge on the highway. How about meeting you there at, say, 4 o'clock?
Good. I'll be there.
Tonight and every weekday night, Bob Bailey in the transcribed adventures of the man with the action-packed expense account, America's fabulous freelance insurance investigator.
Yours truly, Johnny Dollar. Expense account submitted by Special Investigator Johnny Dollar to Paramount Insurance Adjusters, Hartford, Connecticut. The following is an accounting of expenditures during my investigation of the Henderson matter. Expense account continued. Item 7, $5. One pair of galoshes, believe it or not. It snowed in Culver, Montana during the night, all night. By morning, 14 inches of fine new snow covered everything in sight. After my phone call to Mrs. Henderson, I spent the morning trying to rent an automobile. There was none to be had, so that afternoon I dropped over to see Eve Holton, my sheriff friend.
Son, you're going to catch your death unless you start wearing a scarf.
Yeah, I'll remember that, Eve. But maybe I won't need one.
Oh?
Yeah, I think I'll be leaving Culver pretty soon.
Well, I hope you don't mean that, son.
I'm afraid I do. I'll have to tie this case up one way or another pretty quick.
Why?
My company wants me to get back home. I got a letter this morning.
Oh, well, how can I help you?
Well, for one thing, you can lend me your car again. I have a date with a lady out at the Big Horn Lodge.
Pretty fancy. You can have the old thing anytime you want it. You know that, son. Who's the lady?
George Henderson's widow.
Yeah. Oh?
Now, I know what you're going to say. Why go after her? Why bother her until I have something to go on? Well, I got to do something, Eve. I'm no nearer now to knowing whether Henderson was pushed out that hotel window, fell, or jumped. I think I have enough of an idea of Henderson and his wife to pick up some valuable information from her. Any objections?
Nope. Johnny, a couple of days ago you asked me to look up people who might have been especially friendly to Mrs. Henderson. You still want to know about them?
Yeah, sure.
Well, I'm working on it.
Anyone so far?
Nobody I'd put in that category. What time you have to be at the Bighorn?
4.
It'll take you a while. Wouldn't hurt to start right now. She's parked out back.
Okay, thanks, Eve.
Good luck. And don't let her rang-dangle you, son. She could do it if she wanted to.
Goodbye, Eve. 10 minutes later, I was on the road to Bighorn Lodge, which also happened to be the same road I'd traveled 2 days before to attend George Henderson's funeral. As I drove past the graveyard, white and stark against the blue winter sky, I noticed a car parked along the side of the road, a little Chevy coupe about 1952. There was the figure of a woman, all alone, standing by George Henderson's fresh grave. Her head was bowed. She didn't notice me as I walked up. A gray-haired woman, about 45, slight, delicate, gentle. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to start it.
Oh, that's all right. Must be getting late. Dear, it is.
Do I know you?
Why, I don't know. I'm Mattie Knickerbocker.
The name had startled me. The day before, an insurance broker in Great Falls had mentioned her. Told me that George Henderson had named her his beneficiary, then changed his mind a few minutes before he died.
Your name's not Campbell, is it?
No. Johnny Dollar.
Oh, Johnny Dollar. You remind me of a boy I had in one of my classes once, Torrey Campbell.
Oh, you're a teacher, Miss Knickerbocker?
Yes. Everybody knows me, I think. Or at least I flatter myself that way. Well, I should be going.
I knew Mr. Henderson, too.
Oh? He was a wonderful man, George. He was very dear to me. I'll find it difficult getting used to the fact that he'll never be around anymore. George had a wonderful laugh, didn't he?
Yes, yes, he did, Mrs. Knickerbocker.
I never really thought that he ever grew up. Of course, you knew him in a business way, and I'm sure he was very, very grown up in business. But it doesn't hurt to think of him this way now, does it?
I don't think so, Miss Knickerbocker.
I didn't come to his funeral. I didn't think I could bear it. I thought I'd just drive out this afternoon and say goodbye by myself.
Well, I apologize for interrupting you.
Oh, not at all, please. Funny little things. The birds in the snow.
Oh.
Such tiny, wonderful little things. A little bit of God in each of them, Mr. Dollar, wouldn't you say?
Yes, ma'am.
I don't know why. I think George would like to know they're here, near him.
Miss Knickerbocker, I have to tell you...
No, you don't, Mr. Dollar. I know who you really are. Everyone in town knows. You seem like a nice young man. Was it curiosity that made you stop your car?
Yeah, I suppose so. I apologize.
Oh, you needn't. I'm just an old friend of George's, saying goodbye to him. Good afternoon, Mr. Dollar.
Goodbye. Talking to Mattie Knickerbocker, I felt that for the first time somebody, namely Mattie, had talked frankly and truthfully about George Henderson. I was still thinking of the frail, drab little woman with the nice blue eyes when I met Pauline Henderson at the Bighorn Lodge.
What are these matters you want to clear up, Mr. Dollar?
Oh, just some doubts in my mind about your husband's death. What do you drink?
Pernod.
Pernod.
I learned to like it in France.
All right. One Pernod, bourbon, little water on the side.
Yes, sir.
You sound like George when you order.
Hey, I like your Bighorn Lodge. And I have to say, when it's elegant in the West, it's elegant.
I'd like a light, please.
Oh, sorry. Sure.
Thank you.
Mrs. Henderson, do you mind if I don't stall any longer with the drinks, the smokes, and the compliments?
I'm surprised you've stalled this long. I've heard you're a very blunt and impulsive man.
I spoke to an insurance agent named Thurber yesterday in Great Falls. Your husband's agent. Mr. Thurber told me that your husband wanted to name a new beneficiary last week.
Really?
Yeah. He named Matilda Knickerbocker. Mattie Knickerbocker.
I'm not surprised, I suppose. Mattie's a lovely woman. I know George was very fond of her.
Mr. Thurber also told me that Mr. Henderson changed his mind about that the day he died. In fact, he phoned Mr. Thurber in Great Falls and told him to leave the policy as it was. He did that a few minutes after you left his hotel room. A few minutes before he died. Can you explain any of that, Mrs. Henderson?
Why don't you ask Mattie Knickerbocker?
Because I don't think she'd know. I ran into her this afternoon, and I talked to her. Oh, not about this, just about other things. I'll look her up again if I have to. But it's you I want information from now.
Then why don't you ask what you mean, Mr. Dollar?
All right. Did something happen in that hotel room that made him change his mind about you?
That's better. I do wish that ridiculous little man would bring our drinks.
He will.
Don't misunderstand what happened in the hotel room. George and I were going to be divorced. He moved out of the house a month ago. We went to his attorneys and drew up a tentative property settlement.
You mean...
Dunlap, Eder, Reardon, and Blake, Great Falls. They have a copy of that settlement. George was quite generous to me. So I didn't kill him for his money, if that's what you're thinking.
Here we are, sir. Pernod, bourbon.
Thank you.
I didn't see George for 3 weeks or so after we made the settlement. Then we happened to meet one day in Culver, and... well, we had a rather bitter argument. It was one of those ridiculous things. We quarreled and parted very angrily. The whole thing was childish. My first impulse was to go right back to the lawyers and demand every unreasonable thing I could on the divorce settlement. I guess George's first impulse was to cancel me out as his beneficiary.
Did you go to a lawyer, Mrs. Henderson?
No. No, I cooled off. I cooled off considerably, Mr. Dollar. After all, George had been everything to me most of my life. I was truly sorry we never got along as man and wife. I'm glad that we made it up before he died. That morning. He apologized when I came by the hotel. I apologized. After I left, he fell out the window.
Then I can assume that this business with the policies had to do with the argument.
Assume what you like, Mr. Dollar.
I can understand why you're annoyed by me and my questions. It's just that it's kind of hard for us to believe that a man involved in divorcing his wife would still name her as his beneficiary. I say that because of past experience. Oh, it's happened, but as usual.
I could have told you that we were reconciled that day in the hotel, that we were going to drop the whole divorce matter, and that George was coming back to the house to live.
Yes, you could have told me that, Mrs. Henderson. Mr. Connors in our home office in Hartford called you a few days ago. You hung up on him. Why?
Well, I was very upset. I've never been a widow before.
Uh-huh. I believe you, Mrs. Henderson. Sitting here like this. You're a lovely person, and I know it. And you know it. And this is a pretty nice place to conduct business. Why didn't you ask me to your home?
I preferred to talk to you here.
That's what I thought. I saved all the did your husband have any enemies and did he seem depressed questions for another time. But before I went to bed that night, I read and reread Mrs. Henderson's testimony given at the coroner's inquest. The next morning, I interviewed all of the people at the Butte Hotel who'd been on duty the day Henderson fell out the window. After that, I dropped in to see Eve Holton.
Here it is, Johnny, right here. Personal effects of the deceased included 4 suits of men's clothing, 14 shirts, 5 pairs of hosiery.
Was there a bottle in that room, Sheriff?
Liquor?
Yeah.
No bottle. Nothing like it, son.
All right. He didn't call down and have a bellboy bring him a bottle or send him any drinks. The chambermaid swears there was no liquor in his room all the time he lived at the hotel. You say he was a light drinker. Now, what light drinker takes a nip before he has his breakfast?
Who said he had a drink that morning?
Mrs. Henderson.
What?
On the witness stand, under oath at the inquest. She testified that her husband had a drink before she came up to the room and while she was there. Now, mind you, she didn't say he was drunk, but she did say he had been drinking. You read over that transcript.
So?
So I think she threw that in, made sure it got in, because it's sometimes hard to believe that a cold, sober man will walk out of a hotel window and kill himself accidentally. A drunk or a drinker might do it. You and I and everybody at that inquest somehow got the impression that Henderson was slightly tipsy that morning, and Mrs. Henderson saw to that. Now then, if Henderson had a drink, I want to know where he got it. Tell me, Eve. No bottle in the room, no bottle brought up to the room. Where did he get that drink?
That's a pretty good question, son.
There'll be another intriguing episode in our story of the Henderson matter tomorrow.
Tomorrow, the wind-up. Yeah, the whole case blows sky high. Join us, won't you? Yours truly, Johnny Dollar.
Yours truly, Johnny Dollar, starring Bob Bailey, is transcribed in Hollywood. Written by John Dawson, it is produced and directed by Jack Johnstone. Be sure and join us tomorrow night, same time and station, for the next exciting episode of Yours truly, Johnny Dollar. Roy Rowan speaking. From Hollywood, it's time now for
Johnny Dollar.
I have a call for you from Hartford. Go ahead, please.
Johnny?
Right here.
Connor's at Paramount Adjusters. Say, what was this wire, Johnny? You serious about denying liability to Mrs. Henderson?
I sure am. I think it'll bring the whole thing out in the open.
This is pretty serious. Have you got any concrete evidence that Henderson's death wasn't accidental?
Jim, I have a copy of the coroner's inquest. Concrete evidence that Mrs. Henderson lied under oath. She said her husband was drinking the morning he died. Everybody here believed he was a little crocked when he fell out that hotel window. I've got proof that he didn't have a drink that morning.
What proof?
No bottle in his room. No bottle brought there. Nothing. What do you say?
Don't make a move, kiddo. I'll get the first plane.
Tonight and every weekday night, Bob Bailey in the transcribed adventures of the man with the action-packed expense account, America's fabulous freelance insurance investigator.
Yours truly, Johnny Dollar. Expense account submitted by Special Investigator Johnny Dollar to Paramount Insurance Adjusters, Hartford, Connecticut. The following is an accounting of expenditures during my investigation of the Henderson matter. Sheriff Holton agreed that there was enough of a doubt about the circumstances prior to George Henderson's accidental death to warrant an official re-examination of all the facts. He promised me the police would start an immediate investigation. That was all I needed. I knew Mrs. Henderson would be re-questioned and that the pressure would start to build up. 14 hours later, when Tim Connors arrived in Culver, I had some pressure of my own.
Well, Johnny, what?
Well, the best thing we can do now is move in. Deny liability on the grounds that the accident is not proved.
I suppose Mrs. Henderson sues us.
All right, let her. Then the burden of proving that her husband's death was accidental would be on her. Look, Tim, contrary to her testimony under oath, Henderson didn't have a drink that morning he died.
All right, she made a mistake. He had a heart attack, got dizzy, and tumbled out of the window. He wasn't drunk.
Oh, don't talk nonsense, Tim. Listen to me. Mrs. Henderson was ready for the coroner's jury a couple of days ago, and she was ready for my questions when I saw her yesterday. The only one she wasn't ready for was you a few days ago when you phoned her long distance. You said she hung up on you. Well, she half apologized to me for that, but it was because she couldn't think of anything to say.
Well, maybe you're right. But suppose he did die accidentally, and suppose it is a just insurance claim.
I tell you it isn't.
And the fact that she made a mistake testifying about him having a drink and... Hey, Johnny, do you have anything else?
3 things. Instinct, experience, and statistics. Pauline Henderson's a young woman. She married a wealthy older man. With him out of the way, she has all his money and all her youth.
All right, I'm going to phone the company as soon as I can find a phone.
Tell them I'm working for evidence, and the best way to get it is to bring Mrs. Henderson out in the open. File a complaint against her.
What charge?
Suspected murder.
Oh, no, Johnny, that'd get us in all kinds of trouble.
Remember the drink, Tim. Henderson didn't have the drink.
Now, we'll have to have more than that. I'm sorry, Johnny.
All right, I'll get you more. An hour later, I was with Sheriff Holton comparing notes. He reported that after questioning Mrs. Henderson, she admitted she might have been mistaken about Henderson drinking the morning of his death. She wasn't sure. But Eve Holton said what we both were thinking.
You went in front of the coroner's jury and gave a misleading impression, son. Made us think that George was drunk and stumbled out the window. Well, we better find out who helped her pull this off.
Sheriff Holton had every man in his office working on the case by then. It was a long, tedious job of combing over everything in Pauline Henderson's background to find a possible accomplice. About 5 p.m, I drove to the Henderson ranch with Holton. Mrs. Henderson was out, but we interviewed one of the servants.
That's right, sir. Once or twice a week.
Uh-huh. You know where she drove to on these trips?
I have no idea. Mrs. Henderson get up early in the morning, be gone all day.
How do you know she went out of town?
Well, she generally take a small suitcase with her, change her clothes. You don't take those when you're visiting a friend in town, do you?
Tell us what car she'd use on these trips.
The Cadillac. Always come back covered with mud and ice. Always have to be washed up. Mr. Henderson used to complain about that.
About the car being dirty?
About the trips, mostly. He and Mrs. Henderson had some pretty good arguments about him. He'd say Mrs. Henderson shouldn't visit that man.
What man?
Just that man. I never knew who it was they argued about.
You've known Mrs. Henderson quite a long time, huh?
Yes, sir. Knew her when she was a little girl, when she first came here. Saw her grow up, go away to school, go away to Europe, come back a little more grown up and a little different every time.
Were you surprised when Mr. Henderson married her?
Well, no. Well, yes, guess I was.
Because she was so much younger?
Not that so much. I mean, well, Mr. Henderson, he had something about the plains and cattle and mountains about him. When he moved, it was as big as all them things. And Mrs. Henderson is different.
She didn't fit in here? Is that what you're trying to say?
I think she fit. Not like him, though. Before they were married, they were sort of like good friends. I mean, they'd ride horses and go hunting and laugh and talk about different things. Mrs. Henderson, she traveled Europe, saw so many things and places in the world. She fit here, but then she didn't belong here. I feel awful about Mr. Henderson's being dead. If there was anything wrong with the way he died, I'd like it to be fixed. Mrs. Henderson will probably fire me for talking like this, but I don't care. This house isn't the same no more.
By the time we got back into town, Sheriff Holton's boys had discovered the names of 3 men who had been seen at various places around Culver in the company of Mrs. Henderson.
Rod Tyler.
Oh, who's he?
Mining engineer. He's been away from here for over a year now. See, now, here's another one, Sam Pollard. Sam died 6 months ago. Hey.
What?
Noah Baxter.
Noah Baxter. That name's vaguely familiar.
Yeah, he owns a hotel you're staying in. A couple of ranches, too. Well, he might have been the one who tried to have you thrown out.
Oh.
He also owns the mayor.
Young man?
About 30, 35.
Let's go see him. Another drive, this time north of Culver to the Baxter Ranch. We found Noah Baxter busy with his help, shoring horns on cattle. A lean, tall man with thin features.
If you're trying to find out if I've been seeing Pauline on the sly while she'd been married to George, why didn't you come right out and ask?
All right, and have you?
No, not on the sly. There's nothing between us. George knew any time she came over here to see me. He was a good friend of mine. I'm sorry he's dead. Pauline's a good friend of mine, too. I'm sorry you people are thinking what you are about us. Let's go up the house. It's getting cold. All right, Stan, that's enough for today.
Noah, I got to ask you this. Where were you last Thursday?
The day George died, Sheriff?
Yeah.
I was right here.
Can you prove that?
Sure. Ask anybody. You boys want a drink?
No, thanks.
No. Well, I do. Mac! Mac! I get it myself.
When was the last time you were in Culver, Mr. Baxter?
3-4 weeks ago. My cook and the others handle what supplies we need.
You mind if we talk to some of your help around here?
No. What do you want to talk to him about?
About last Thursday, about what happened when Mrs. Henderson came here to visit.
It wouldn't look good if she came here to visit me, would it?
Well, that depends on the circumstances, no?
She'd come and sit there and read and look at some of those paintings. We'd talk when I had time. Anything wrong with that?
No. Mr. Baxter, I think I ought to tell you, I've asked my company to file a complaint against Mrs. Henderson. Suspicion of murder.
Oh. I'd like to tell you something. She didn't kill him and she didn't have him killed. She loved him a lot more than George loved her, I think. Both of you know her. Her dad was a drunken cowhand. When he died, George took her over, gave her everything. So you see, you're wrong. She loved George for giving her what he gave her, and mostly for being the kind of a man he was. I lied to you a couple of minutes ago. There was something between us. It was bound to happen sooner or later. She'd come here to cry on my shoulder, and I let her.
Cry?
About George. He wanted to divorce her. Didn't you know that?
I had the idea it was the other way around.
Oh, you're all wrong. George raised her, educated her, made her into a woman, and then he married her. And she wasn't what he wanted at all. You know who George wanted to marry? Mattie Knickerbocker, the schoolmarm.
Go on.
Oh, there was nothing between George and Mattie, but there would have been if he'd lived.
What about you and Mrs. Henderson?
Yeah. The thing that was between us was that I wanted her. She didn't want me, but I wanted her. I was glad when she told me about the divorce coming up. I really think she would have listened to me. But she wanted to be married to George. She really loved him. Sure you don't want one of these?
No.
No. And I really loved her. I went to see George last Thursday at his hotel. You know why? To tell him to go back to Pauline. Yeah, because I knew what he meant to her. You can talk to my people around here. They'd lie for me and say I was here last Thursday all day. They'd tell you that Pauline never came to see me. They'd lie right down the line for me. But, Mr. Dollar, I can't let you get out that complaint and take her in. One of my trucks was taking some beef to the hotel last Thursday. I rode in with the driver and went in the back way. I went right up to George's room to talk to him. Pauline had just left. I wanted to talk to him about the same things I've been telling you. I didn't want to hurt him. I loved him, the same as everybody loved him. When I got to his room, he wouldn't let me talk at all. He was mad that I interfered. He tried to swing on me. I shoved him once. He went out the window. That's all. I killed him.
Expense account item 8, $58.15, hotel and food while in Culver, Montana. Item 9, same as item 2, transportation by train and plane back to Hartford. Item 10, $88, miscellaneous. Expense account total, $802.50. Remarks? We still had to pay double indemnity. Mattie Knickerbocker, Pauline Henderson, Noah Baxter, they'll pay another way. With the hurt that comes to nice people. Yours truly, Johnny Dollar.
Remember, there'll be another exciting story beginning next Monday night.
Next week, a real mystery, complete with plenty of action, a beautiful blonde, and a killer lurking in the shadows. Join us, won't you? Yours truly, Johnny Dollar.
Yours Yours truly, Johnny Dollar, starring Bob Bailey, is transcribed in Hollywood. Written by John Dawson, it is produced and directed by Jack Johnstone. Heard in this week's cast were Lillian Bayef, Irene Tedrow, D.J. Thompson, Herb Ellis, Marvin Miller, Forrest Lewis, Bob Bruce, and Russ Thorson. Musical supervision by Amerigo Marino. Be sure to join us on Monday night, same time and station, for another exciting story of yours truly, Johnny Dollar. This is Roy Rowan speaking. From Hollywood, it's time now for...
Johnny Dollar.
Joe Parker, Johnny, Surety Mutual.
Oh, hi, Joe. What's on your mind?
A gorgeous doll named Dolly McLean. Remember her?
Sure. The Champagne Dream Girl.
Yeah.
Dancing darling of the roaring 20s. Finally married Barnaby Cronin, didn't she?
Right. And for a wedding present, he bought her the Circle of Fire.
Oh, yeah.
One of the 5 most beautiful necklaces in the world. Diamonds and emeralds. Worth $500,000. It's been lying in a bank vault for the last 10 years since Barnaby died. We carry the insurance.
So?
She's coming out of seclusion, Johnny, giving a party. Just like the old days, she says. May go on for a week. A last fling. And she's going to wear the Circle of Fire.
Uh-oh.
Get the picture? Gallons of champagne, everything mixed up, crazy. And that old lady with $500,000 around her neck. Target.
You've got a problem, Joe.
Johnny, we've got a problem.
Tonight and every weekday night, Bob Bailey in the transcribed adventures of the man with the action-packed expense account, America's fabulous freelance insurance investigator.
Yours truly, Johnny Dollar. Expense account submitted by Special Investigator Johnny Dollar to the Home Office, Surety Mutual and Trust Company, Hartford, Connecticut. The following is an accounting of my expenditures during investigation of the Cronin matter. Item 1, $14.80. Transportation to New York and to the apartment of America's one-time dream girl. One time, a long time ago.
How do you do?
I'm Johnny Dollar. I believe Mrs. Cronin is expecting me.
I'm Mrs. Cronin, and yes, I am expecting you. Won't you come in?
Oh, thanks.
I did have butlers and maids and such for years, scads of them. But since Barnaby passed away, I've just hibernated, you might say. Oh, in here, Mr. Dollar.
Thank you.
10 years now in this same little apartment. As you can see, I've just been living like a little mouse.
That looks very comfortable.
Oh, I suppose it's comfortable enough, but... Oh, Sylvia, I'd forgotten you were still here.
Mm-hmm. But not for long, Mrs. Cronin.
Oh, no, please stay. We'll have some tea or sherry or something as soon as... Oh, you two, do you know each other?
No, I'm afraid we don't.
Oh, but of course not. How could you? Sylvia, this is Mr. Dollar. Miss Blake.
How do you do, Miss Blake?
Hello. Mr. Dollar's here to talk to me about, something or other. I'm not quite sure what, as a matter of fact.
It won't take but a few minutes. If Miss Blake would excuse us.
Sure. Go ahead. Have at it.
Well, if you'll come this way, Mr. Dollar. Don't you leave now, Sylvia.
Not a chance. I just spotted your bottle of tea. I'll have 1 or 2 with soda, if you don't mind.
What's Oh, I see what you mean. You young people. In here,
Mr. Dollar. You by any chance, Johnny Dollar?
Yeah, that's right. Why, Miss Blake?
Just wondered. Well, here's looking at you. And, brother, I wouldn't be in your shoes for $1 million.
No? How about $500,000?
That, I'll admit, might interest me.
Well, shall we?
After you, Mrs. Cronin.
Thank you. Wonderful girl, a born comedian.
Yeah, she's a scream. What is she, an actress?
Oh, no. She writes things for magazines and things like that. Sit down, Mr. Dollar. She came to interview me one time. That's how I met her.
I see.
She wrote a piece about my necklace, the Circle of Fire.
Sylvia Blake. Oh, sure. Articles about gems, famous stones, jewel robberies.
That's her. Oh, she's fascinated by the subject. She's coming to my party.
Oh.
Why don't you come to my party, Mr. Dollar?
Fine, I'd love to. In fact, that's why I'm here.
Oh?
Joe Parker over at Surety Mutual is kind of worried about this party, Mrs. Cronin. He's afraid you might invite people like me.
What?
I mean, people you don't know.
You're a detective.
In a way.
I told Joseph how I felt about that. He's not going to send any detectives around snooping into things, spying on my guests, wearing the hats in the house.
Huh?
Oh, not that you're like that, of course. But it's the principle of the thing.
Well, wouldn't you have a better time at your party if you knew you were safe?
Mr. Dollar, it was at a party that Barnaby gave me the Circle of Fire. Our wedding reception. There were over 2,000 guests, 1,000 of them invited. And we danced. Oh, we danced all night. And the necklace was beautiful. And I was beautiful. Back then.
True, but...
And then afterward, at 4 o'clock in the morning, we drove through the park in a hansom. Just the two of us. And the driver, of course. And I wore the circle. And I was safe, Mr. Dollar. I was perfectly safe.
Maybe you were just lucky that night.
Barnaby was so wonderful. And he could make living so wonderful.
Well, I don't doubt it. He was probably a man who could manage things pretty skillfully.
He was running 2 railroads and a bank, all at the same time.
Then I imagine he had no trouble arranging for your safety without even letting you know about it.
You mean guards all around?
It's possible.
Yes, it is. He was like that. He never wanted anything to worry me. All right, Mr. Dollar. You win.
Good.
But it's only because of one reason. I like you, and I want you at my party.
Thank you, Mrs. Cronin.
Oh, you're going to love every minute of it. It's up in the Adirondacks. Our old summer place. Joseph told you, I suppose.
Yes, he did.
Mrs. Cronin.
And the people I've invited. Hundreds, literally. People I knew in the old days. Of course, a lot of them won't come, but, it was strange. So many of the letters came back undelivered.
Mrs. Cronin.
Oh, Sylvia, I didn't hear you. Come in.
I'm the sneaky type. You've got a visitor. Says he's an old friend.
Really? Well, I suppose I'd better see you. You'll excuse me, Mr. Dollar.
Sure, go ahead.
You and Sylvia talk to each other.
I brung the bottle in case you're interested.
Short on the soda.
Right. She's on a cloud by herself. Of course, some of the invites to the party were undelivered. Those beautiful people had a habit of dying young. Say when.
When? Who's the visitor?
I'll guess with you. Looks like an overgrown leprechaun. Said his name was Shorty Weber.
Shorty Weber?
You know him?
I know of him. An old-time song and dance man, among other things.
She probably worked in a show with him back in those dear dead days. Anyway, he's got an invite clutched in his sweaty little palm. Another freeloader, I suppose.
Aren't we all?
I am, yes. Not you, though. You're working your way.
Isn't that what you're doing, one way or another?
Meaning?
A magazine article, just in case. Written right on the spot. Attempted theft of the Circle of Fire. Clever jewel
Why
thief.
do you say attempted?
I'm working my way, remember?
Sure, I remember. But it won't be attempted, Johnny. Somebody's going to get that necklace before the weekend is over. I'll bet on it.
Would you care to name any names?
Pick a name off the guest list. Any name.
Suppose I pick Sylvia Blake.
You're the detective.
You've dug up and written up every big-time jewel theft over the last 50 years. You're bugged on the subject. Obsessed with beautiful gems.
Fits my personality. I'm rather beautiful, too, in a brittle and glittering sort of way. Don't you think so, Johnny?
I think you work pretty hard at that tough act.
Maybe.
And I think you'd give your right arm to own that necklace.
Going after that would really be going for the big one. Going for broke. And somebody will do it, Johnny. Wait and see.
She left a few minutes later with the bottle under her arm and a chip on her shoulder. With the girl gone and the scotch gone, there seemed to be no point in me hanging around any longer. So I went looking for Mrs. Cronin to say goodbye. I didn't find her, but I did find her caller, Shorty Weber. He didn't hear me come into the room. He was too busy. He was hunched over Mrs. Cronin's writing desk, going through her mail. You won't find it there, Shorty.
Who's that?
Hold it, Shorty. Don't try to reach for it.
I wasn't gonna. Honest, I wasn't.
Turn around. Put your hands up against the wall.
You got me all wrong. I wasn't gonna
relax.
do that. I was just
38, stub barrel, clip holster. Nice gun.
It belongs to a friend of mine.
Bad business, Shorty. An ex-con packing a gun.
Oh, I guess you're Johnny Dollar. She said you was here. And I know what you're thinking, Mr. Dollar, but you're wrong. Why, Dolly, Mrs. Cronin, she's an old friend of mine. I tried to get her to marry me once, over 30 years ago.
A lot can happen in 30 years. Does she know you've served time in prison?
No. She thinks I was on tour, Europe and Australia. She never reads a paper or hears anything. Don't tell her, Mr. Dollar. Please don't.
You know, it's quite a coincidence, Shorty. It was Jules that time. A big affair in New Orleans. And you were hired as an entertainer. A diamond bracelet, wasn't it? And you were caught cold.
It's the only time in my life I ever done anything like that. And I went again. Especially not to her. Why, I'm planning to look out for her at this party. That's why I bought the gun.
And is that why you were going through her mail there?
Yeah. I wanted to see who was coming. I learned things while I was doing time. I know how the word gets around in a big deal like this. There's a lot of wrong guys in this world.
No argument, Shorty.
Yeah, well, you met her. You know how she is. She's a babe in the woods on something like this.
Should my ears be burning? Or is it some other babe, you mean?
Not for me, Dolly. You're the only babe I ever could see.
Oh, Shorty, you never give up. Oh, do you two know each other?
Not exactly, but we found we had a mutual friend. A certain state prison warden.
Oh, how nice. Shorty's always doing benefits at those places.
Dolly.
Yeah, that was it. He did a benefit there.
Oh, well, I'll bet you weren't over big.
Well, you know.
You're too modest, Shorty. Why, they loved him, Mrs. Cronin. Hated to let him leave.
Yeah. Well, speaking of leaving, I got a shove now. Don't take any wooden nickels.
It was crazy and corny and sad. The whole idea. I guess the sadness of it hit me when I was saying goodbye to Mrs. Cronin at the door. The gaiety slipped for a moment, and suddenly she was old and tired. And at the same time, she was a scared little girl. And then she said something strange, and the shivers ran up my back.
Do you believe in premonitions, Johnny?
Well, I have a hunch now and then.
Well, whatever it is, it's the reason I'm doing this. Having this party. One last fling, you might say. Before it's too late.
Oh, come now. You're still a young woman, Mrs. Cronin.
No. I'm old, Johnny. I've been old for years. Since Barnaby died. We loved each other so... But that's not what I mean. I've had this premonition lately.
What sort of a premonition?
That something awful, something terrible is going to happen to me.
There'll be another intriguing episode in our story of the Cronin matter tomorrow.
Tomorrow, a man who's afraid of his shadow, a girl who's afraid of nothing, and a stranger who strikes in the dark. Join us, won't you? Yours truly, Johnny Dollar.
Yours truly, Johnny Dollar, starring Bob Bailey, is transcribed in Hollywood. Written by Les Crutchfield, it is produced and directed by Jack Johnstone. Be sure to join us tomorrow night, same time and station, for the next exciting episode of Yours truly, Johnny Dollar. This is Roy Rowan speaking. From Hollywood, it's time now for...
Johnny Dollar.
Mr. Dollar, this is Jason Prell.
Jason
I
Prell.
manage Mrs. Cronin's trust fund.
Oh, sure.
We haven't met, of course, and I know that I'm overstepping the ordinary bounds of propriety, but I simply have to talk to you immediately, if possible.
Well, can't it wait until train time? You're going with us up to a party in the Adirondacks, aren't you?
Yes, I am, but it'll be too late then to make very much difference.
Well, maybe you could tell me the general idea of what you
I
want.
understand Mrs. Cronin has authorized you to obtain the Circle of Fire from the bank and to keep it in your possession until she wears it at the party.
Yeah, that's right.
Don't do it. Leave the necklace where it is.
Why?
It's a long story, Mr. Dollar, and it goes a long way back. The whole thing is a lot more complicated than you realize.
Well, I'm beginning to realize it. Just exactly what is it you're worried about?
I'm worried about Mrs. Cronin's sanity.
Tonight and every weekday night, Bob Bailey in the transcribed adventures of the man with the action-packed expense account, America's fabulous freelance insurance investigator.
Yours truly, Johnny Dollar. From Special Investigator Johnny Dollar, New York City, to the Home Office Surety Mutual and Trust Company, Hartford, Connecticut. Assignment, the Cronin matter. Expense account continued. Item 4, $1.80. Taxi to the offices of the Daily Times Courier for a look at the morgue files on Mrs. Cronin. The clipping started with the year 1916, when a bright-eyed, wide-eyed kid named Dolly McLean danced her way out of the chorus lines of a two-bit musical and straight into the limelight of Broadway. One hit show after another, hits just because she was in them. And parties, balls, social affairs. The Dancing Darling. A critic tagged her with a name in her first write-up, and the name stuck. So she danced away the mad, crazy years that followed World War I. And like everybody else, she lived it up. There were rumors of engagements, love affairs, the Baron this, Count that, one after another. Shorty Weber was mentioned a few times. And Jason Prell was in from the beginning, as a promoter, though, a business manager, not as a lover. Her friends were mentioned, hundreds of them. Then Barnaby Cronin came into the file. Boy wonder of the business world, the golden prince. Engagement, marriage, and Barnaby's fabulous gift to his new bride, a $500,000 necklace of diamonds and emeralds, the Circle of Fire. Then Barnaby's sudden death, Mrs. Cronin's seclusion. End of file. Expense account item 5, $24.30, transportation, hotel, and incidentals. And a taxi to the railway station to find the special coach Mrs. Cronin had chartered to haul her guests to the Adirondacks and to her roaring 20s weekend party. I purposely got there early, but one of the guests was even earlier.
Mr. Dollar, wait. You are Mr. Dollar, aren't you?
That's right, but I don't think...
Jason Prell.
Oh.
I thought you might come down early to meet the bank messengers. Thank heaven you did.
Well, I'm afraid I don't...
Dollar, I've known Dolly McLean and Mrs. Cronin for over 35 years. All that time, I've managed her business affairs, arranged her personal contacts, been like a father to her.
Yeah, I've read the newspaper clippings.
Newspaper stories can be misleading sometimes. They build things up. Sensationalism. It's true, of course, that Dolly and I had some quarrels. Who doesn't? In spite of everything, I was still her best friend.
Go on.
I know Dolly, know her better than anybody else in the world. I know how she's gone downhill since Barnaby died, especially in the last year or so. And I know this whole idea is the worst possible thing she could do.
Have you tried talking to her along that line?
She won't listen. She's dead set on it. I'm hoping you can help.
How?
Point out to her how dangerous it is to go off into that isolated place with a piece of jewelry as valuable as a Circle of Fire. It's worth a fortune. Somebody's bound to try to steal it.
I still don't get what you're driving at, Mr. Prell.
But I just told you. It's the risk that's involved.
To whom?
Mrs. Cronin, of course.
She knows about the risk. She's willing to take it.
She doesn't know what she's doing.
Hey, you said something on the phone about her sanity. Are you trying to imply that she's...
No. Not yet. But she's not well. She's burned herself up back in those early years, and she hasn't much left. The only thing that keeps her going has a crazy kind of belief.
Belief?
Dolly believes in people.
So do I, Mr. Prell.
Well, yes, of course. But Dolly's whole thinking hinges on it. All the people she knew back in the heyday, the people she calls her friends, in her book, they can do no wrong. She lived in a dream world, still does, like a fairy princess. But it never really existed. Things weren't like that back in those days, Mr. Dollar.
So I've heard.
Most of the people she thought of as friends were only trying to use her. Barnaby and I would block them off, take care of things when things had to be done, and let her go on living happily in her Never Land.
And now, that's the only land she has to live in. Is that what you mean?
Exactly. Why, some of those friends would cut their mother's throat for a tenth of the value of the Circle of Fire. Those are the guests she'll have at their party.
Well, I've already been told once that somebody will steal that necklace before the weekend is over. Do you want to add your prediction?
I think somebody will try. And that's all that's needed to start that dream world of hers falling apart and to make her face things the way they are.
May I ask you a question, Mr. Prell?
Yes, of course.
This trust fund you're managing that her husband left for her, just how big is the setup?
Barnaby Cronin was a wealthy man, Mr. Dollar, but he had his ups and downs like every business investor. The capital is adequate for her support, but not much more.
Is the necklace a part of the trust capital?
It's her own personal property. Otherwise, I could have prevented it from being taken from the bank.
You have complete control of the trust.
Yes. Barnaby knew that she had no understanding of business matters.
I see.
She's old, Mr. Dollar. Older than her years. Tired. All that keeps her alive is her belief in the past.
Yeah, her dream world, where everybody loves her and protects her, where she's still a dancing darling.
And if that dream world is destroyed, she'll be destroyed along with it. Now phone the bank, Mr. Dollar. Ask them not to bring that necklace here.
I'm afraid they think I was crazy.
Why?
Because I've got it with me, Mr. Prell. I picked it up myself 2 hours ago.
Then heaven help us all.
The convention coach Mrs. Cronin had chartered for the run to the Adirondacks was arranged with a long aisle of individual staterooms and a main lounge area at one end. It could accommodate 50 people, but when the train pulled out, there were only 6 of us in the coach. 6. Out of the hundreds of friends she'd had in the old days when she was in the big time and on top. And even out of the 6, 3 of us were new acquaintances, people who hadn't known her back when. I was there, of course, because I'd been hired to be there to protect her fabulous necklace. And Sylvia Blake, still playing it tough and cynical, was probably hoping for a magazine article, or hoping for something. But the third newcomer, there was the question mark.
Oh, I think this whole thing is just too exciting for words. Don't you think it's too exciting for words?
Well,
I know who you are, of course. You're Mr. Johnny Dollar, and you're supposed to protect those fabulous jewels. And I'm Laura Dean. And I think we ought to call each other Laura and Johnny, because after all, it's a party, isn't it?
Up till now, I was having doubts. You're, obviously not one of Mrs. Cronin's friends from the old days.
Oh, no, I just met her back there at the station.
You what?
Well, I talked to her on the phone, of course. She sent an invitation to my aunt, who was a very dear friend of hers, only they hadn't seen each other for years, and she didn't know my aunt had passed on over a year ago. So I phoned her and told Mrs. Cronin, I mean, and she said for me to come to the party, she'd like to meet me, and I wouldn't have missed it for anything.
Yeah, well,
Johnny, do you think they'll really have champagne in bathtubs like they used to back in her time?
If they do, it'll get awful wet out. There are only 6 of us to drink it.
Oh, gosh, I don't see how you can call 6 people a party.
Well, the thing is, we'll all be in there trying hard.
Now you're joking me. I'll bet you're fun at a party.
Oh, wait till you see the act I do with the lampshade. Who did you say your aunt was?
I don't think I said who. When do they start serving the champagne, Johnny?
When they see the whites of your eyes.
That's cute. I like that.
Thanks. Now, about your aunt.
Poor old soul. She'd have loved this, too. You ought to hear about some of the parties she and Mrs. Cronin used to go to.
Yeah, I imagine.
They used to go every place together back in those days. The newspapers called them the Siamese twins.
The
Siamese twins. That was just an expression.
Fritzie Morrell. Is that what you're saying? That you're Fritzie Morrell's niece?
Sure. Did you know her, Johnny?
No, I never met her.
Oh, you'd have liked her. She was a lot of fun. Loved to party. Gosh, I thought there were more people than this.
She kept babbling on, and I listened to her, tried to figure her out. The chatter was smokescreen. Underneath it, she was cool, sharp, and shrewd. I didn't know what she was up to, nor why she was here. But I did know one thing. Fritzie Morrell had died about a year ago, true enough. But she'd left no surviving family and no niece. Laura Dean was a liar. I hadn't seen Mrs. Cronin since we pulled out of the station. She'd greeted us, then gone right to her stateroom and stayed there. And when I saw Jason Prell come hurrying from that direction, I could read the look on his face even before he reached me.
Mr. Dollar, please.
Mrs. Cronin?
Yes, go to her at once.
What is it? What's wrong?
She was suddenly taken ill, very ill. Hurry.
Mrs. Cronin.
Well. Oh, I'm all right now.
Oh.
It was just nerves. I've had it before. My doctor in New York gave me some tablets to take whenever...
Are these the tablets? This bottle here?
Yes. You know what they are, Johnny?
Yeah, I know.
All right. So he does say it's my heart. But he's wrong. It's just nerves.
Yeah, sure.
That's not why I sent for you, Johnny. You have the necklace.
Yeah. Want to see it?
No, I'll wait until it's time to wear it. Johnny, I've written something here. I'm going to sign it, and I want you to sign as a witness.
Well, all right. Unless you'd rather have Jason Pro.
Jason would argue about it. There. Now you sign.
There you are.
Keep it for me.
Do you mind if I know what I've signed?
Of course not. Read it if you like.
In the event of my death, I, Dolly Cronin, being of sound mind, bequeath the necklace known as the Circle of Fire to Sylvia Blake.
Sylvia loves jewels. She'll appreciate it.
Yeah, I imagine she will.
And she's not to know about this, you understand, because, of course, it'll be years before she gets it.
Oh, sure it will. Now, you'd better try to get some sleep.
I'm going to. And thanks, Johnny.
It was nothing.
You know something? I was heartbroken when they didn't show up at the station. All my old friends. But I've been lying here thinking, and I've finally figured it out.
Oh?
They all went on ahead. They'll be waiting at the house. They're trying to surprise me. Don't you think so, Johnny?
I said yes, I thought so. But I was lying because I didn't think so. But she was still a dancing darling, and she had that way about her. You wanted to protect her. I didn't go back to the lounge. I walked down the corridor to my stateroom. It was night by then, and the corridor was only dimly lit. My stateroom was dark. When I opened the door, I caught a bare flash of movement. Too late. Oh! When I came to, minutes later, I was lying on my stateroom floor, blood seeping from a cut in my head. I felt in my inside pocket for the bulky leather case that had held the necklace. It was gone.
There'll be another intriguing episode in our story of the Cronin matter tomorrow.
Tomorrow, an old love and an old hate. And violence breaks out at midnight. Join us, won't you? Yours truly, Johnny Dollar.
Yours truly, Johnny Dollar, starring Bob Bailey, is transcribed in Hollywood. Written by Les Crutchfield, it is produced and directed by Jack Johnstone. Be sure to join us tomorrow night, same time and station, for the next exciting episode of Yours truly, Johnny Dollar. Roy Rowan speaking. From Hollywood, it's time now for
Johnny Dollar. Hello.
Dollar? You're the Mrs. Dollar that's been trying to phone me?
Is this Dr. Bigby?
That's exactly who it is, and I'm very busy right now.
Look, Dr. Bigby, I want you to come out here just as soon as possible. It's the old Cronin summer place, about 5 miles up the river from where...
Oh, I know where it is, I know. What are you doing up there? The house has been closed for years.
Mrs. Cronin opened it up for a party this weekend, but she was taken ill on the train coming up, and I want...
Is Dolly out there?
Yes, she's the one I want you to look at.
So she's back. After all these years, she's come back.
She had a prescription from her doctor in New York, but she's taken the last of it. It's apparently her heart.
I'm sorry, Mr. Dollar. I'm very busy tonight.
Oh, what?
Much too busy, and then there's a storm coming up, and I have a patient someplace, I think.
Now, wait a second.
If you're a friend of Dolly's, Mrs. Cronin's, do one thing. Take her back to New York. Now. Tonight. Get her out of here. Fast. Before it's too late.
Tonight and every weekday night, Bob Bailey in the transcribed adventures of the man with the action-packed expense account, America's fabulous freelance insurance investigator.
Yours truly, Johnny Dollar. From Special Investigator Johnny Dollar at Wells Falls, New York, to the Home Office, Surety Mutual and Trust Company, Hartford, Connecticut. Assignment, the Cronin matter. A $500,000 necklace. Expense account continued. Item 7, $5.40, taxi. I figured I'd find Dr. Bigby in one of the local pubs, but I covered them all in about 30 minutes. No sale. And unfortunately, Bigby was the only doctor in Wells Falls. Worse, the local druggist couldn't fill Mrs. Cronin's prescription. The nearest chance was Tupper Lake, 25 miles away. Back out at the Cronin place, I turned the taxi over to Jason Prell, Mrs. Cronin's business advisor, and he took off for Tupper Lake to look for the medicine. Then I went looking for Mrs. Atherton, a village woman who had been housekeeping on the estate since the place was built. I found her in the kitchen.
Storm's brewing up, coming out of the mountains. It'll hit us before morning. They always come in the night.
I guess you've seen a lot of storms in these hills, Mrs. Atherton.
Lived here all my life, never been out of them. It's Miss Atherton, not Mrs.
Oh.
She's the missus up in the bed, even if she is a widow. Little Dolly, Mrs. Cronin, till death do us part.
Did you know Barnaby Cronin, Miss Atherton?
Yes, I knew him. Of course I knew him. I worked here.
Oh, yes, you were here then. What kind of a man was he?
Like any other man.
Not according to Dolly, Mrs. Cronin. She apparently worshipped him. Still does, in fact.
Dolly's always worshipping something. Everybody was always worshipping her. She had us all dancing to her tune, and without even trying.
You knew her back then?
She was born and raised here in the village. I thought everybody knew that.
No, that's what I missed.
Well, we used to work together, waiting tables at the summer hotels around here. That's where Jason Prell saw her. Told her she ought to be on Broadway. She left the town the next week. Didn't come back again till after she and Barnaby was married. And she got him to spend a fortune to build this place for her.
Well, I guess he had the fortune to spend.
Oh, yes. She married well. Count on Dolly for that. Always got whatever she wanted and never even had to ask. Things were just given to her, always.
Yeah, probably so. But she's been pretty generous herself. Like keeping you on here, for instance, when the house has been closed up for years with nobody using it.
Oh, she's the dancing darling, all right, right to the end. Well, now, if you'll excuse me...
There was something else I wanted to ask you, Miss Atherton.
I'm not one to talk ordinarily, but you got me started.
Well, this is not about Mrs. Cronin, at least not directly. She was taken ill on the train. I don't think it's serious, but I wanted a doctor to look her over. The only one in the village seems to be a man by the name of Bigby.
Bigby? He's the coroner here, but he's not a doctor.
No?
No, not anymore. Still calls himself one, but he lost his license 10 years ago. He's a drunken sot.
Yeah, I kind of figured. But he sobered up fast when I told him on the phone that the patient was Mrs. Cronin. He refused to come out, told me to get her away from here fast, and then he hung up on me.
Forget him. He couldn't do her any good.
But I'd like to know why he acted that way. Do you happen to know any reason?
Bigby is a drunk. Who knows what his reasons are?
I thought you might.
Better ask him. What difference does it make anyway? He can't help her. Nobody can.
What do you mean?
She's come back, finally. For the first time in all these years. Took sick on the train. That wasn't any surprise to her. She knew it was going to happen.
Well, I guess she halfway knew.
She knew. It's like with an animal. When it's hurt or sick and it comes home to die, and that's what she's done. She's come home to die.
No, I think you're wrong there, Miss Atherton. I don't think she's anywhere near that sick.
Barnaby didn't think so either, when he came back here to die.
Barnaby died here?
Yes, in this very house. A heart attack, it was called. He came up on the afternoon train and... That's strange. It was the same kind of night. A storm like tonight. Strange how things move in patterns.
Were you here with him, Miss Atherton?
Barnaby died alone.
And the doctor? Bigby? Miss Atherton, was the doctor...
I'm sorry, I was thinking. The bridges were washed out. Bigby didn't get here till the next morning. Wouldn't have mattered. He couldn't have done anything. Nobody could have. When it's time for a thing to be done, it's done. Nobody can stop it. Nobody.
It was a strange evening, ominous and oppressive, with a feel of violence in the air. Even the house itself added to the feeling. Furnished lavishly in a style 30 years forgotten, it seemed garish now, old and tired and lonesome. Like Mrs. Cronin herself, who'd planned a grand party for all her old friends, and instead lay ill and alone in the bedroom upstairs. The Queen gave a party, and nobody came. All dressed up, no place to go. Yeah, gloomy evening. Jason Prell came back from Tupper Lake with the medicine. Miss Atherton served a dinner of sorts, served it in silence, and we were left to our own devices. 5 guests and a mansion built for 100. Prell stayed pretty much to himself. Lovely Laura Dean, with that air of knowing innocence, inveigled Shorty Weber into teaching her some of his old dance routines, and they cranked up an old phonograph in the music room. And me, I just stood at an open window and watched the rain come down and tried to think.
That's the perfect touch. It's exactly what the evening needed.
That music? Ah, Sylvia.
Really cornball, isn't it? No, Johnny. I meant the thunderstorm. An isolated old mansion, fabulous necklace of diamonds and emeralds, weird housekeeper, a hostess lying ill, and now rain. Shades of a House of Usher.
That'll make a good lead for your magazine story.
I should have stayed in New York and just written it, not lived it.
Oh, I thought you were the big take-a-chance girl, Miss Blake. Danger, mystery, adventure. Don't those things appeal to you?
Maybe. Is there any of that lying around somewhere?
There may be, before the night's over.
Well, all I can see at the moment is sheer boredom.
You have to know where to look.
In the bottom of that Scotch glass, for instance?
Just killing time.
Oh. I've been wanting to ask you, Johnny. How'd you get that cut on your head?
It's a long story.
It happened on the train, I know that. You didn't have it when we left.
A sudden stop. I fell over my suitcase.
Sure you did. Backwards.
Huh?
It's on the back of your head. Somebody made a try for it, didn't they? On the train coming up.
Well, I don't know what they were trying for. It wasn't time to waste.
Maybe they even got it.
That's the way you were betting, wasn't it? That it wouldn't be just an attempt. That somebody was going to get it and get away with it.
Did they? Is that what happened? Is it gone? All right, just stand there and grin then. Oh, rain. I'm going back to the city tomorrow.
You are?
Well, don't smother me with your pleading.
No, stick around, Sylvia. Things may get better, including the music.
You know, in a way, I hope somebody did get the Circle of Fire.
Why?
What good is that fabulous necklace doing her now, lying up there? She's had everything she ever wanted. Life's been too easy on her. She doesn't deserve it. She ought to lose it.
Her life or the necklace?
The necklace, of course.
You know, for reasons I can't go into, I think you'll be sorry you said that someday.
Sorry? Why? She's a woman who's had everything.
You're a pretty predator, aren't you? Hurt and afraid.
Am I?
You feel something big may have passed you by, and you put up that tight, bright front for protection. But inside, you're tied in knots.
And what is your recommendation, Doctor? A man, perhaps? That's the usual advice.
Now, you said it. I didn't.
Well, you're a man, Johnny. Why don't you smooch with me? It'd be a way of passing the evening, killing time.
All right.
What are you... Johnny, wait! Johnny, why did you do it?
Because you wanted me to, and because I wanted to.
Adventure, mystery, danger. Who's bored? Who's going back to the city? Those doctors are right.
Dollar, could I talk to you for a minute?
Why not, Shorty? What's on your mind?
I don't know exactly why you called us all together in here.
It was Mrs. Cronin's idea. She set it up with me earlier.
Well, it ain't got nothing to do with what I want to say. You seen me in a bad light there yesterday at Dolly's apartment.
Well,
you found a gun in me. You know about my record. It made it look bad. I know it did. But so help me, Mr. Dollar, everything I told you was the gospel truth.
Yeah.
I'd break my arm before I'd do anything to harm Dolly in the least bit. You see, I've been in love with that woman for 35 years. Like to broke my heart when she married Barnaby. But I always knew I didn't have no chance right from the start. She was up there, big, somebody. Me, I was a nobody. But I'd still die for her any time. That's all, Mr. Dollar. I just wanted you to know.
They were all there, gathered around the big dining table, watching me and waiting. Mrs. Cronin had asked me to arrange it. She said that was the main reason they'd come, and she didn't want to disappoint them. I told them that. And then I took the circle of fire from my pocket and laid it on the table. They all reacted in different ways. Laura Dean gave a gasp and her eyes opened wide. And Sylvia...
Look at it. Just look at it.
Sylvia Blake was fascinated, hypnotized.
Yeah, you should have seen it on her back in the old days. It sparkled even twice as much.
So that's what this is all about. It's only jewelry. I've seen it before.
But there was one special reaction I was looking for, and I got it. Jason Prell's face went white.
Who could imagine anything so beautiful?
Mr. Prell, you seem surprised. I wasn't carrying the necklace in its case, the case you stole from me on the train.
What?
I was carrying it loose in my pocket. What did you do, throw the case off the train without even bothering to...
It's running away!
Prell! I went after him, but he'd already disappeared somewhere down the hall. He knew the layout of the house and I didn't. I searched the different rooms quickly as I passed, but there was no sign of him. He couldn't have reached the floors above, but he might have gone down toward the game room and lower halls. I eased my gun from its holster and started slowly down the stairs. And at that moment, every light in the house went out.
There'll be another intriguing episode in our story of the Cronin matter tomorrow.
Tomorrow, a white lie, a bullet from the darkness, and death comes in out of the rain. Join us, won't you? Yours truly, Johnny Dollar.
Yours truly, Johnny Dollar, starring Bob Bailey, is transcribed in Hollywood. Written by Les Crutchfield, it is produced and directed by Jack Johnstone. Be sure to join us tomorrow night, same time and station, for the next exciting episode of Yours truly, Johnny Dollar. Roy Rowan speaking. From Hollywood, it's time now for...
Johnny Dollar. Hello, Sheriff. I can't hear you for the storm. We were cut off before. Hello? Is that you, Sheriff? I said... Hello?
You get cut off again, Mr. Dollar?
Not this time, Shorty. Somebody cut the wire. The phone's dead.
Then we got no way of getting White out, no way of getting help.
No, not at the moment.
And he's out there in the dark somewhere. He's got a gun and there's no telling what he may try and do.
Shorty, get away from that window. Well, we know where he is now and what he intends, because he just made a try at it.
What are you going to do about him?
Only thing I can do, Shorty, go get him before he gets me.
Tonight and every weekday night, Bob Bailey in the transcribed adventures of the man with the action-packed expense account, America's fabulous freelance insurance investigator.
Yours truly, Johnny Dollar. From Special Investigator Johnny Dollar at the Cronin Estate, Wells Falls, New York, to the Home Office, Surety Mutual and Trust Company, Hartford, Connecticut. Assignment, the Cronin matter. Protection of a $500,000 necklace. Expense account continued. Item 10, $135. One tweed sport jacket to be purchased on my return. Both lapels and one shoulder ripped by a bullet. Also one pair of slacks to match. Destroyed a few minutes later in the mud, slush, and underbrush in the grounds of the Cronin place while pursuing a suspect who'd already tried twice to kill me and who made a third go at it when I stepped out of the side door of the house. Away from the door, quick.
Whew, boy, that was close.
Yeah, you can see the door opening, but he can't see us, not in this mess. He's desperate. He's shooting blind. Look, Shorty, why don't you go on back in the house? There's no reason for you taking chances like this.
You're taking them?
With me, it's a job of work. I get paid for it.
I told you earlier how I felt about Dolly, I mean. I don't know what Jason Prell's game is, Mr. Dollar, but if it's against her, then I'm against him. I'm staying.
All right, it's up to you.
Thanks for giving me the gun back.
Emergency, that's all. You've got a prison record, Shorty. You know what it means if you're caught with a gun.
Yeah, I know.
Hey, good. I figured Prell would give himself away if he kept that up. I got him spotted now.
Where?
At the base of that tall pine, a little to the left. Watch for it, the next flash of lightning.
There, yeah, now I see it. I know the one you mean.
Then stay here and keep him pinned down. It's a good spot. You've got cover from the wall of the terrace there.
What are you going to do?
Circle around and come up beside him. Just throw a shot at the base of that pine tree now and then. Keep him tied down. Keep him busy. You got it?
Right. And good luck.
I left the shelter of the house and started edging through the shrubbery. The undergrowth was a regular jungle. It would have been impossible to slip up on Prell without his hearing if it hadn't been for the storm. Shorty Weber fired now and then at the pine tree. And twice Prell fired an answer. Jason Prell, so-called friend of old Mrs. Cronin, knew I had him tagged. At first I'd been guessing mainly, but he didn't know it. And he'd lost his head and made the guess prove out. And now he was apparently ready to risk murder or death rather than face a prison term. I was within 30 feet of him. He hadn't heard a sound. He was still firing at Shorty over on the terrace. His back was turned partly toward me. He didn't know I was near, so I leveled my gun. Get your hands up, Prell. Drop that gun. You're covered. He whirled, peering into the darkness of the bushes, trying to see me. He knew I was close, but he couldn't tell where. He raised his gun, started to turn, and I'm not quite certain what happened next. The light was bad, and I could hardly see him. Whether he stumbled accidentally or what is something I'll never know. All I know is that when I walked over to him, he was dead.
He was no good, Mr. Dollar. I always thought so, but Dolly swore by me. He had her fool.
What about Barnaby, her husband?
He couldn't stand Prell at first. Later, they got as thick as thieves.
Yeah. Well, it's a mess, Shorty, a real mess. Old things that should have stayed dead and buried on the bottom, they're all coming to the surface now.
Tell me something, Mr. Dollar.
Yeah?
What about Dolly? Is this thing going to kick back on her? Will she get hurt by it?
Yeah, Shorty, I'm afraid she will. Pretty badly. It was deep into the night, edging toward dawn, when I got back to the house. I changed out of my wet clothes, went to the game room, and got Dolly's necklace from under a chair cushion. I'd stuck it there when Prell had pulled the main switch and put the lights out. Then I went upstairs to look in on Dolly Cronin, quietly, just to check. But it didn't work out that way.
Johnny, is that you?
Yeah. I didn't mean to wake you.
Oh, you didn't. I've been awake most of the night. Come on in, Johnny.
All right. How you feeling?
Oh, just fine. There's nothing wrong with me. I feel fine.
Good.
Isn't Laura Dean a nice girl?
Huh?
Yes, she is. And I'm glad she came. Company for you, Johnny.
Oh, yeah. Quite a storm we had, wasn't it?
Oh, it was beautiful. All that lightning, wind, and the thunder. Oh, I haven't seen such a beautiful storm since I was little. Johnny, thought I heard shots a while ago.
Shots?
Outdoors, off toward the woods somewhere.
Oh, it might have been lightning, thunder.
Sounded like a gun, like somebody shooting.
Well, sound plays funny tricks up here in the mountains.
I guess so, but... Well, I've been thinking back over the past so much that makes the present a little unreal. I'm afraid the past is about all I have left now.
Now, don't be so quick to sell this future of yours short. You've got a lot of years yet, good years.
Well, I had a lot of good years. Good friends, good times, a good life. And best of all was Barnaby.
You loved him very much, didn't you, Mrs. Cronin?
I worshipped him. He was perfect. He never did a wrong thing in his life. Now that he's gone, is the one fine memory I always cling to. Oh, if I didn't have that, well, I just couldn't go on.
Well, then let's hope you never lose that memory.
Of course, there were other good friends, too, over the years, like Jason Prell. He is so quiet and withdrawn, it takes a long time to get to know him. But he's been such a good friend to me. He's so patient with all this silly ignorance of mine about business problems.
Yes, I'm sure he has.
I just don't know what I'd do without him.
Yeah. Now, don't you think you'd better get some sleep?
In a little while. You know, Johnny, it's funny how things work out.
In what way?
I was born and grew up right here in this village.
Yes, your housekeeper, Miss Atherton, told me the two of you were girls together.
We were inseparable. Like I said, I grew up here and then I went away. And Barnaby and I came back and built this house, and we went away again. There were always so many places to go, new things to do.
It's a big world, isn't it?
And finally Barnaby came back for the last time and died here. All alone, poor boy. And now I've come back, the place where I was born. Everything finally comes home, doesn't it, Johnny?
Yes, nearly always.
I'm very tired. I think I will sleep now.
Be good for you.
The necklace, Johnny, do you have it with you?
I sure do. Here you are.
So beautiful. And so many memories. All so long ago. Put it on me. Will you, Johnny?
Of course. Raise up now. Just a little. There.
How do I look?
Sweet enough to kiss.
Well? Nice.
You go to sleep now.
Yes, sir. I'll only look at the necklace for 1 minute only. Then I'll take my pills and go to sleep. And then I'll dream up a dream. A great big dream.
Good night. Dancing, darling.
It's been a long time since anyone called me that. A long, long time. Good night, Johnny. And thank you.
I left her and went downstairs and rustled myself a pot of coffee. I sat down by an east window and drank it cup after cup and watched the morning sun come up. Dream a big dream. Well, before many more hours, she was going to need a big dream. There was no way of keeping it from her, all of it. The fact that Jason Prell was dead, shot, that he'd attempted murder and tried to steal a necklace. And worst of all, that her beloved Barnaby had probably been as big a crook as Prell.
Is it all right if a girl who can't sleep sits this one out with you?
Sure. Pull up a chair, Laura. Like some coffee?
Just black, thank you. I guess it wouldn't do much good to ask you what's been going on around here all night.
Something has?
Like I said, I guess it wouldn't do much good.
Here's your coffee.
Oh, thanks. That's how I found you, just followed the smell of this coffee. Good. I guess if I said I heard somebody shooting up the place during the storm, you'd just say, really?
Never used the word.
And I guess if I showed you that broken window over there, you'd say maybe a pigeon flew in.
Might, if I happen to think of it. I'm sorry all this kept you awake.
Well, don't apologize. I probably wouldn't have slept anyway.
Why not? Guilty conscience?
Don't be silly. I didn't even do it.
Do what?
Whatever it is I'm supposed to feel guilty about.
Lying is what I had in mind at the moment.
Oh, I do that all the time, but I never feel guilty about it. I just call it making up things.
Like claiming you were the niece of Fritzie Morrell, Mrs. Cronin's oldest friend.
Gosh, went down my windpipe.
Like claiming you're Fritzie Morrell's niece.
Mostly I drink tea, but you already had the coffee
Like
made.
claiming you're Fritzie...
All right. How'd you find out?
Nothing very spectacular. She just didn't have a niece.
I wasn't sure, but I thought she must. Everybody her age has at least one niece.
What was the idea? Well?
Well, I lived in the same rooming house she did. She liked me, talked to me a lot before she died last year. So when the invitation came last week, I got the idea of going as her niece. I didn't mean any harm by it. I just wanted to go to the party.
All right, relax. That's about the way I figured it. Well, it turned out to be quite a party, didn't it?
I hope I never see another one like this. Johnny, what's wrong with her?
It was Miss Atherton. I got up slowly from my chair as she walked toward us and then stopped a few feet from the table. Her eyes were fixed on something far away, and the look on her face was strange and grim. I think I knew even before she spoke.
Mrs. Cronin is dead.
There'll be another intriguing episode in our story of the Cronin matter tomorrow.
Tomorrow, the questions and the answers for the living and the dead. The final payoff. And fate itself plays the last trump. Join us, won't you? Yours truly, Johnny Dollar.
Yours truly, Johnny Dollar, starring Bob Bailey, is transcribed in Hollywood. Written by Les Crutchfield, it is produced and directed by Jack Johnstone. Be sure to join us tomorrow night, same time and station, for the next exciting episode of Yours truly, Johnny Dollar. Roy Rowan speaking. From Hollywood, it's time now for...
Johnny Dollar.
Dr. Bigby here.
Dr. Bigby. I'm asking you for the second time now to come out to the Cronin place.
I told you last night, Mr. Dollar.
The circumstances are different now, a lot different. We don't need a doctor. We need a coroner.
A coroner? Where are you calling from? The operator told me the phone out there was out of order.
It is. I'm at a forestry station a mile down the road. Jason Prell cut the wires last night before he was killed.
Jason killed?
Shot to death during the storm.
So that's how he ended up. It took a long time, but everything finally comes home.
Yes, Mrs. Cronin said the same thing an hour or so before she died.
Dolly, too. Her heart, Mr. Dollar?
In a way, maybe.
The dancing darling. Finally at rest. She... What do you mean, in a way?
Dr. Bigby, Mrs. Cronin was murdered.
Tonight and every weekday night, Bob Bailey in the transcribed adventures of the man with the action-packed expense account. America's fabulous freelance insurance investigator.
Yours truly, Johnny Dollar. From Special Investigator Johnny Dollar at the Cronin Estate, Wells Falls, New York, to the Home Office, Surety Mutual and Trust Company, Hartford, Connecticut. Assignment, the Cronin matter. Expense account, final page. Item 13, 10 cents. A half pack of cigarettes I left with a farmer who gave me a lift back from the forestry station. The price of my own feelings at the moment would have been lower. About 8 cents lower, in fact. I brewed another pot of coffee and sat down to wait for Bigby. But this time I laced the coffee with brandy. The sun was up by then, clear of the horizon, bringing a bright new morning and a brand new day. The storm was long over, and the world sparkled and danced. But too much of the night was still with me, and the past still too much alive. And yet, maybe Dolly Cronin was better off. She was a part of that past now, where friends were always true, and every minute of life was even more wonderful than the last one. And where she was still and forever, the dancing darling.
Good morning, Johnny.
Oh, hi, Sylvia. I'm in the coffee business this morning. How about it?
Please. Having yours with cream, I see.
Yeah, bad night. Shall I make yours the same way?
Right. I had a bad night, too. Thanks. You look real beat, Johnny.
Couldn't be any beater.
Something pretty terrible happened last night, didn't it?
Yes. Jason Prell is dead.
Oh.
And Dolly Cronin is dead.
Oh, no. I loved her, Johnny. I didn't mean what I said last night about life always having been too easy for her, and you were right. It was just being frustrated, tied in knots and covering up. I loved her. She was sweet.
Yeah, she was quite a gal. She had something, I don't know.
She had love. She loved people, and they loved her in return.
Maybe so. Anyway, I guess this belongs to you now.
The necklace? The circle of fire? What do you mean it belongs to me?
She made a will last night. I witnessed it. She left the necklace to you.
I just can't believe it. Johnny, can I put it on?
Why not? It's yours. She wanted you to have it. Ah, you look good in it.
I just can't believe it, Johnny.
Well, before you get carried away too far, maybe you'd better brace yourself.
Oh, it's not mine after all.
Oh, it's yours, all right. But it's not real.
What?
It's a good copy, worth maybe $400 or $500, but that's all.
Well, I don't understand. It's so well known. The circle of fire, it's been written up over and over.
Yeah, from old records. But nobody's really examined it for years, since before Barnaby Cronin died. It's been locked up in a bank vault until I took it out.
Was there ever a real one?
Yes, originally. But it was broken up and disposed of years ago. Jason Prell knew it, was in on the substitution, I suppose. That's why he was so desperate to steal it from me and get rid of it before I found out it was a copy. He knew that if that deal came to light, it would call attention to some of his other activities, worse ones.
What do you mean?
Prell had complete charge of Mrs. Cronin's estate. He told me it was worth practically nothing. But according to records I saw in New York, it amounted to over $1 million in the beginning.
He was stealing her blind all these years.
Oh, it was easy. She was alone in the world, knew nothing about business. She trusted him, thought he was her friend.
She trusted everybody, much too much.
Well, she sure trusted the wrong ones, including her husband.
Barnaby?
Sure. What do you think disposed of the necklace and slipped her a copy after making such a big deal out of his fabulous wedding gift?
A phony. And she worshipped him. The king. In her book, the man who could do no wrong.
Well, in the business book, he didn't do much else but wrong. According to the records, most of his deals were pretty shady. Especially after he and Prell teamed up. Yes, Miss Atherton?
Dr. Bigby is here to see you.
All right, show him in.
Mr. Dollar, I wouldn't believe too much of what he says. He's a chronic drunk.
Yes, I remember you telling me. Show him in.
Yes, sir.
Well,
I was just thinking, Johnny. Mrs. Cronin didn't know any of this, I assume.
no, she was safe in her dream world.
And she thought she was giving me the real necklace.
That's right.
It's crazy. And kind of wonderful, isn't it? Just like that, she gave me something she thought was worth $500,000. Just because I was nice to her and liked her. You know something, Johnny?
What?
I'm just as glad it is a copy. It's beautiful, and I love wearing it. I'd have been scared of the real one. And I'll always remember that, like that dream world of hers, she thought it was real.
One more question left, but a big one. The question of murder. And I already had the answer, I was sure of it. And I knew there was nothing I could do about it. Dr. Bigby was a man under 60, but he looked years older, a harried man, tired and worn. He sat down for a moment and we talked. And I began to realize that here was another man who'd been under Dolly Cronin's spell, and who was shocked and hurt by her dying.
It was a remarkable thing and a difficult one to explain, Mr. Dollar. Like many another, I suppose, I often wondered why I felt the way I did about her. It was a sort of magic she had.
Yeah, I know.
Even as a girl here in the village, she had that same power and had it without knowing it. Everybody loved her.
No, not quite everybody. At least one person didn't.
Yes, you mentioned on the phone the word murder.
That's right, Dr. Bigby.
Who killed her?
A man we can't touch because he's already dead. Jason Prell.
Well, he's done about everything else, I guess. I wouldn't put it past him. What do you base it on, Mr. Dollar?
A bottle of pills. Prell supposedly went to Tupper's Lake last night and got a prescription filled from Mrs. Cronin. She took some of it this morning, an hour and a half before she died. There it is. I'd seen the bottle on the train coming up with a few tablets left on the same prescription. And these are different.
Well, you're right on one count, Mr. Dollar. Those aren't what the prescription calls for.
What do you mean, one count?
I talked to the druggist at Tupper's Lake on the phone last night. He told me about Jason being in.
All right, it still stands. He had the prescription filled and then changed the tablets, substituted these.
It's possible.
Would you happen to know what they are without having them analyzed?
I've got a pretty good idea, but I'll wait until I've examined her before I'll say positively. Mr. Dollar, I'd like to explain why I wouldn't come out when you called me last night.
Yeah, I wish you would.
I'd been drinking.
So I gathered.
I'd been drinking that other time, too, and I'd made a mistake. I didn't want to make another one.
Just what do you mean?
When Barnaby Cronin died here, I signed the death certificate.
Yes, I know.
I hadn't treated him. He was dead when I came out. I called it a heart attack. I was drunk. And I was wrong. Barnaby was poisoned.
Go on.
I didn't suspect it until later. And then I was afraid to do anything about it. I'd signed that certificate, and I knew it would break me. So I kept still, and I consoled myself with drink. And finally, it broke me. So the same end result was achieved.
Look, Dr. Bigby, if Barnaby Cronin was here alone, then how was he poisoned?
Alone? He wasn't alone when he died. She was here with him.
Mrs. Cronin?
Of course not. Why do you think he was always making trips up here, always by himself?
I didn't know he was.
For years, every week or two, the whole village knew about it. She was here with him that night. She's the one who called me, asked me to protect her good name. She's the one who poisoned him. And now she's had another try with the same poison.
But why?
Ask her why. Ring for her and ask her.
That won't be necessary.
Well, I'll go on up and make my examination.
Well, Miss Atherton, I'm asking, why?
He was planning to break off our relation. He told me that night. She'd finally won. That silly little fool had finally won. But I didn't let her win. I killed him.
You're confessing to murder, you know.
It doesn't matter now. I've accomplished everything I meant to accomplish.
So it was you who changed the tablets in her prescription bottle and substituted the poison.
Of course. It was so easy. For once in my life, things were just as easy for me as they'd always been for her. Will you have the sheriff come out, Mr. Dollar? I'd like to make my confession.
It's odd how things work out sometimes, Mr. Dollar.
Yeah. Mrs. Cronin said something like that last night.
I was pretty certain when you showed me the tablets, but I wanted to make my examination first.
What do you mean?
After Barnaby died and I started to suspect Miss Atherton, I managed to steal the poison from her in order to analyze it. I substituted harmless tablets of the same general appearance.
And those are what she's kept all these years? What she gave to Mrs. Cronin?
That's right. They were perfectly harmless.
But in that case...
Dolly Cronin died from a heart condition. The tablets had nothing to do with it. In a sense, Dolly died the same way she lived, from natural causes.
Expense account item 14, $83.90. Incidentals and transportation from Wells Falls back to Hartford. Expense account total, $263.30. End of account, end of report. Remarks? The insurance angle here seems a little muddy. Premiums were paid for years on an item that didn't exist. And yet, no claim was filed, and none will be. So, well, I leave it to your legal eagles. Me, I'm beat and tired and maybe a little sad. I've come out of this with a kind of nostalgia. And for a time and place I never even knew. And I'm halfway in love with a girl back in that time and place. A girl I've never seen. Oh, sure, I know, it's a dream world and a dream girl, and none of it exists. But it's too bad. I wish it did. Because she must have been a honey. A real sweetheart. A dancing darling. Yours truly, Johnny Dollar.
Remember, please, there'll be a new exciting story on Johnny Dollar beginning next Monday.
Next week, the story of a man worth $50,000 who didn't have a cent to his name. Join us, won't you? Yours truly, Johnny Dollar.
Yours truly, Johnny Dollar, starring Bob Bailey, is transcribed in Hollywood. Written by Les Crutchfield, it is produced and directed by Jack Johnstone. Heard in this week's cast were Virginia Gregg, Shirley Mitchell, Vivi Janis, Barbara Fuller, Benny Rubin, John Daner, and Parley Bear. Musical supervision by Amerigo Marino. Be sure to join us on Monday night, same time and station, for another exciting story of Yours truly, Johnny Dollar. Roy Rowan speaking.